أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد.
So I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. The industrial sector is the engine of modern economics, but it also comes with this significant environmental cost. The global emissions from industrial sector in the cement industry are around 7 to 8%, and Pakistan's cement sector is not far behind. It also contributes to the economic success of the country as well. So as the climate change concerns rise and initiatives like the CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism of the European Union, is looming on the horizon, it is crucial for the cement industry to reduce its carbon footprint. Our nationally determined contributions for Pakistan, the NDCs, have set an ambitious target to halve the greenhouse gases of Pakistan by mid-century, by 2030, sorry. So the cement industry has a very critical role to play. Today, we'll be launching two studies. One is a study initiated by the Policy Research Institute for Equitable Development, or PRIDE, that I work with, in collaboration with the National University of Sciences and Technology, NUST, in 2023 of March, and it was completed by the end of last year. The second study is by the Sustainable Development and Policy Institute, the SDPI. It was initiated on the request of the Ministry of Climate Change and Environmental Coordination in the start of 2022, and it was compiled and completed last year. So today's agenda, as you guys have in your files, we're going to start with the opening remarks from Dr. Waqar Ahmed, who will be joining us online. Then we'll move towards the industrial decarbonization and comments from Professor Dr. Mohammed Fahim Khokhar. Then we'll have the studies from both the organizations, and finally discussion and feedback from our experts. I would like to invite Dr. Waqar Ahmed, who is an economist and currently working as the Joint Executive Director at SDPI, and who has served in advisory capacity at many national, regional, and international institutions and forums. So, Dr. Waqar, please, would you be kind enough to give us the opening remarks? Thank you.
Thank you for this kind introduction. Let me start by thanking our guests, our panelists, our discussants, esteemed speakers for today. I can see an excellent lineup. I am also supposed to be with you in the in-person setting. We are just waiting for a delegation at the Ministry of Commerce, after which I should be able to join you. Nevertheless, I would like to extend a very warm and heartfelt congrats to the teams of SDPI and PRIDE for spearheading the studies on decarbonizing the cement sector. I would also, of course, welcome the experts who would be adding value to these studies and extending this discourse going forward. I think, as the introduction has explained to us, decarbonization stands as a cornerstone of global commitments, offering a transformative pathway for countries to mitigate carbon emissions and combat the pressing challenges of climate change, due to which, of course, countries like Pakistan are worst hit. The industrial landscape, characterized by its significant carbon footprint, places industries at the forefront of emissions reduction efforts, regionally as well as globally. Among these, the cement sector holds a substantial prominence, contributing approximately 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions. The Pakistan cement industry serves as a linchpin in the economic fabric, making very vital contributions to its GDP and employment landscape. However, the cement industry is certainly carbon intensive, posing a formidable challenge in aligning with the climate targets, particularly with Pakistan's commitment to have greenhouse emissions 2030 under its nationally determined contributions. The transition to low carbon cement production necessitates navigating a very complex area of challenges, including protracted investment cycles, slim profit margins, technological inefficiencies, and very limited financing avenues. Cement production, as we all know, is a multifaceted process, demands a socio-technical paradigm shift encompassing a transition to low carbon fuels, improved energy efficiency, clinker substitution, robust carbon capture, utilization, and storage mechanisms going forward. Regulatory reform, innovative business models, and of course, policy frameworks are imperative to drive market transformation and propel the industry towards decarbonization objectives. I think this is where roundtables like these, where Pride and STPI are able to discuss their findings with the industry, with the government, are so important. Also now for countries, CBAM is opportunity which ensures that imported goods entering the EU reflect their true environmental cost, leveling the playing field for industries like cement and industry. Steel, if I can also add, as one of the industries. And if we see that in the wake of decarbonization agenda, STPI has been proud to unveil the road towards net zero. And this visionary endeavor represents an effort aimed at accelerating frontier research, fostering policy solutions, and catalyzing some bold action to expedite progress towards achieving the net zero emissions. At its core, this initiative aims to facilitate a seamless transition towards net zero emissions, serving as a guidance for government bodies, corporate entities, businesses, and several other stakeholders who have joined us today in person and online. The focus areas of the net zero initiative include the zero emission energy and spearheading initiatives in power fuels such as hydrogen and ammonia to drive the decarbonization efforts. We also look at green supply chains and trade, so that net zero trade policies, regulations around them, and governance systems around them can improve sustainability efforts across the supply chains. The greenhouse gas emission accounting is an important area, given that greenhouse gas emissions inventories to accurately assess and mitigate carbon footprints are extremely important. So in conclusion, I'm really very hopeful and very optimistic about these efforts. The decarbonization journey of Pakistan's cement sector is possible through our collective commitments to sustainable development and climate resilience. And it is through these collaborative endeavors and innovative solutions which the industry players sitting over here would bring forward that we are poised to surmount the challenges and forging a pathway towards a more sustainable and resilient future going forward. So thank you very much, and I would like to hand it over back to our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Waqar, for your very useful insights. So we're going to move on to our next speaker, who is Professor Dr. Mohammad Fahim Khokar, who is working as a tenured professor at the Institute of Environmental Sciences and Engineering at NUST. He is the director of Sea Cargo, which is Climate Change and Atmospheric Research Group, and a newly established spin-off named Environmental Services and Sustainable Solutions Private Limited. His main emphasis of research activities are on climate change adaptation, mitigation, carbon footprint estimation, air pollution, monitoring and assessment, forest monitoring, nature-based solutions, sustainability, and cost-effective solutions. So without further ado, Professor Dr. Fahim, would you be kind enough to tell us more about industrial decarbonization?
Thank you, Amara, for this kind introduction. I would like to appreciate the initiative taken by Pride Institute in giving us opportunity to conduct this study. So the following speaker will actually give you the facts and figures about the study we conducted as a part of NEST team. But I will try to give you some very strategic points that why industrial decarbonization is important, and what kind of the low-hanging fruits and the benefits we can get out of that. Okay, so this could be a bit little surprising for all of you, because recently having so many efforts and measures and transitioning towards the renewables, the global emissions have risen again, is still rising actually. So 1.1% rise in global CO2 emissions. And this mainly coming from the coal. This is a bit disturbing thing, that the 65% was contributed from the coal. So it's a bit alarming as well, but it's a new learning as well, because this was a very typical scenario where we have seen this unwanted and unexpected increase in global CO2 emissions, which was mainly caused by some climate-induced disasters because of the dry spells in some part of the world. So there was a hydropower electricity wasn't there. Water was not enough to produce sufficient. So ultimately, China has to transition again from renewable to coal-based thermal power production to meet the energy demands. So that is mainly because of that. So yeah, the encouraging thing is that besides if such measures like transitioning towards the efforts what we had in place already by the global level, transitioning to the renewable energies, if that wasn't there in place, so this increase should have been threefold higher than what we have experienced in 2023. So this is another encouraging sign that the world is committed to reduce dependence on fossil fuel energy. Okay, another important fact is that China's per capita emission now surpassed the other Western nations, are giant emitters, which is 15% higher than as compared to the other nations. So yeah, this can be seen, sorry, through this map. So you see here, China is leading, more polluting in case of annual CO2 emissions, followed by US, and then Russia and some India and some other part of the world as well. So this is an interesting one. If you look at this, there has been a paradigm shift in global CO2 or greenhouse gas emissions. If you look at in the early 1950s and till 1980, so mainly the Western nations, European Union and the US was the major key players in as emitters. But after 1980, there has been a huge shift. The China and the Asian country and to a certain extent, India and Russia has actually became more emitters globally then. So for instance, if you today, China, US, and India alone account for more than half of the global emissions. So that means they are the big players. So they need to be I mean, their commitment should matter, will be matter a lot for recent. We are here to discuss the decarbonization pathway of the cement sector. And as my predecessor has already mentioned that the scope of cement sector, because after steel sector, steel industry, the cement sector is the biggest emitter because it also utilizes the fossil fuel based energy, and also the process emissions are quite low. So it's for year 2017, it was producing 7% of global industrial emissions. And 2020, it was 7.1%. So there are a lot of so I strongly believe in actually one thing that if there is a big emitter, then it has a bigger scope to mitigate the emissions. So if somebody is not emitting much, so there is a less scope available for the mitigation. So obviously, cement sector could be, and even if you look at the Pakistan scenario, the cement sector is contributing 7 to 8% of emissions. And Pakistan are hardly contributing to 1% of the global emissions. So, I mean, it could be a potential sector for mitigation of CO2 emissions or greenhouse gas emissions in Pakistan as well. So why this is important, why we are concerned about. So we need to look, because as a part of Paris Agreement, if we want to curtail our global warming well below 2 degrees Celsius or even below the 1.5 degrees Celsius, we need to have to reach to net zero by the industrial emissions by 2050. And these are different scenarios, and these are actually corresponding the temperature or the warming. So the interesting thing is that even this dashed line is the 1.5 degree scenario. That means even opting to, which is not possible anymore, even if you opt that, so still there will be, by the 2035, there will be the warming above 1.5 degree. So, and then later by 2060 onward is going to down below 1.5 degrees. So still we need to recognize that the next 2 decades or 3 decades is going to be very problematic, and we need, I mean, it urges the demand of our to recognize the need of adaptation measures as well, not just the mitigation, but the adaptation measures as well. Okay, so why industrial emissions? Because the industrial processes need a lot of heat, ranging from 50 to 1600 Celsius. And then there's other, particularly in the steel and the cement sector, there are other process emissions which are quite huge. Okay, so as I mentioned before, keeping the warming target well below 2 and 1.5 degree, that requires that industry should go close to zero by 2030. If we want to achieve our net zero target by 2050, we should be close to near zero industrial sector emissions by 2030. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult. So for this, there are several options that can be taken. So sector and regionally tailored mixes of more material efficiency, a higher volume of quality of recycling, electrification of existing processes, because electrification has relatively less emission as compared to direct reliance on the fossil fuel. Process changes that allow switching to ultra low GHG emission fuel, and feedstock and carbon management. So this is very interesting figure published by the IPCC latest report. So this is a systematic and multi-pronged strategy to approach decarbonization. Mainly, they have listed like demand and material efficiency, use design and building codes to minimize like the most polluting sectors like cement and the steel. So the circular economy is quite in. So for instance, once produced could be a raw material for the other industrial application, and this cycle can goes on. So the ultimate goal or motto of this circular economy is that there should be zero waste to the landfill sites. Energy efficiency, again, it's very important, maximum end use and system efficiency in all sectors, electrification, fuel switching of existing process, using heat pump or even geothermal heat pumps are quite in nowadays. So process changes allowing use of low greenhouse gas energy using hydrogen for reduction electricity for melting. Key example is the steel, and again, the cement sector, and then carbon management, carbon capture and storage, carbon taxes, and so on. So these are all measured to control the emissions and also moving towards the decarbonization. So I'm just going to go through quickly because Amara is staring at me. 12 strategies to decarbonization are reduce the global CO2 emissions, making the very, I mean, they're not most of them, most of you are actually very much familiar to these one. Making the switch to the renewable energy. Everybody knows that how renewable is very important for any type of activity, not just industrial, but also the individual level as well. Increasing energy efficiency, the same important. Any bit of conserving energy or saving energy contribute ultimately for the mitigation effort and combating climate change. Carbon pricing, this is the new mechanism, just is a sort of, it could be an incentive, it could be punishment to regulate the carbon emissions. Reforestation and afforestation, so enhance the carbon sequestration sinks. That is very important, and by the way, it's the most cost-effective way to mitigate CO2 emissions is the forestation technique. The greener agriculture emission. This is a sector which is very important for the food security and the human well-being. So, but there's a lot of scope to work on to lower the emissions, particularly methane emissions coming from the rice paddies and others. Use of synthetic fertilizers, which actually results in excessive emissions of nitrous oxide as well, which is a very potent greenhouse gas. So transport electrification, electric vehicles are hydrogen-based vehicles. This is very important because they have less CO2 footprints, carbon sequestration and the storage. This is the one thing which I mostly favor. I really like it very much because this sector addresses the unavoidable emissions of any industrial process or any activity. So it could be carbon capture, storage, it can be stored underground in geological capturing. It could be carbon capture, storing, and utilization to produce another product, to offset carbon emissions. Urban sustainability planning. So we need to make our urban developments well aligned to the SDG goals and make them sustainable. So ultimate goal is to zero waste and other offsetting carbon emissions, public education and awareness. So ultimately, we are the end user or end receiver of this climate change impact. So we need to be well aware of the activities, because every activity has certain carbon footprints. So they need to be very well equipped and educated about their consequence. Cooperation on the global scale. So not just the global scale, but the regional scale. So all the treaties, all the activities, developmental goals should be well aligned to the international treaties, particularly treaties like the Paris Agreement and any other agreement who is helping in offsetting the lowering reduced greenhouse gas goals. So this cannot be done through the innovation in technology. Innovative technologies has to be a key player and will be the backbone for the next decades to get to the net zero targets. So yeah, this is the approach, like cyclical economy or circular economy. So we need to go for the zero waste and offsetting the carbon emission. So finally, the take-home message is industrial decarbonization is not just reducing or addressing the climate change impacts, rather it's also helping to mitigate air quality condition as well, which will save millions of lives globally and the human well-being. And then second one is building infrastructure to decarbonization. Industry is crucial to mitigate carbon emissions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Fahim. You still had 5 minutes though,
Oh.
if you'd like. Okay, yeah. So if anyone has any questions for Dr. Fahim, then please.
Questions about.
So my question is very quick and pertinent. Regarding the decarbonization method, you said this is a critical process and it will be both capital and resource intensive. But how could it be achieved in the is facing pressures? And one thing more, sir, you mentioned the hydrogen-based vehicles or use of hydrogen as fuel. In UK, many of the studies and instances have been appeared where hydrogen has not been that successful. The engines of those vehicles were not performing with that efficiency. So this is also another sort of setback where we are looking at hydrogen as as an environment-friendly fuel, but on the other hand, its efficiency is not that good. So in this scenario, how will this decarbonization would be managed? Thank you.
So thank you, Ali. This is a very pertinent question. Yes, there are two ways that we can convince or motivate our industrial sector. As I mentioned before, that the innovative technology is going to be the key player in this to get our decarbonization, our net zero targets. So there are two types of strategy. Like the industrialist requires retrofitting solution because I don't want to change their industrial setup in overnight and want to go for the very cleaner option. So they require, first demand is that the retrofitting solution should be there. And the second one is like a very innovative one, which has a relatively, like you mentioned, depending on hydrogen, like blue hydrogen or green hydrogen. So yes, true, the efficiency is not there, but just imagine 10 years back or 20 years back, nobody was talking about the hydrogen as. So now the things have evolved over the time. And the next decade are like, so it's going to be like the major. Even nowadays, some studies have proved that electric vehicle, hydrogen-based vehicles are much more effective than the electric vehicles itself. Their efficiency, their mileage, and all these things. So I'm quite hopeful that there will be in near future there will be a revolutionary changes, and there is going to be a paradigm shift in the electric vehicles emissions, definitely. So over there, yes, please.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Fahim, for your presentation. Regarding the decarbonization, we have already committed that we are going to achieve the target of 50% by 2030 in the cement sector. So any consent from the cement industry when the ministry is going to make NDCs, and they have submitted its NDCs to the UNFCCC. So there is any linkages between the industries and the government of Pakistan when we are going to commit that we will reduce 50% reduction by 2030. Can you just to confirm, because we are going to commit, if the cement industry is on board and they are agreed that they are going to phase down or reduce 50% by 2030. So any consent or any, because there are around about 29 cement industry in Pakistan.
Industrial plants, yes. Yeah.
From the cement industry to the government for this reduction.
Okay, thank you for this question. Well, I'm not the representative of cement industry, but as per my experience during conducting this study, I have the exposure to discuss with certain cement sector industrialists or their management. So they are quite committed. And the only thing is this linkages is this connection between the policymakers and the industrial sector. And even another one like our research and development institutes and academia. So when we approached them, we came to know that the most very few of them, like 4 or 5 industrial or even more industrial units, have already deployed waste heat recovery units. Okay, so they are contributing to decarbonization. And most of them have already, in the limited capacity, they have already installed solar panels. So that means our commitment is there. We need to channelize this commitment through policy instruments. So I guess if ministry takes initiatives, then it's going to be low-hanging fruit, particularly to the cement sector. They are very much committed to go for the decarbonization. Yes.
Any thoughts on incentives to the industry by the government for them to move on quickly, more quickly towards greening their systems and operations?
I guess, well, again, being, as I'm not, again, representative of Ministry of Climate Change, so I would, but being having some exposure because I'm a part of Climate Change Councils of Pakistan as well. So the ministry has taken initiative and the approval has been already there of launching a carbon market, which is going to be another incentive for the industrialists to go for this carbon credit and carbon offsetting measures. It could be very much incentives because the biggest challenge in this is that third-party assessment are when you register yourself for carbon credit testing claiming, so the consultant price is too high. So I mean, it's more than the revenue generated are somehow equally. So the industrialists get zero benefit or negligible benefit. So this was the biggest constraint, and then probably having a local carbon market, this constraint can be addressed. And the second thing is that European Union has already introduced CB carbon border adjustment mechanism, CBAM. So that means either you pay carbon tax here locally or you have to pay to them. So I guess every industrialist would prefer to pay locally rather than paying them in. So sooner or later, government of Pakistan has to take this step to get to avoid this draining out the revenue to the European Union rather than to have this collection at the Pakistan level, because this is already in place partially for some sectors like iron and the cement sector. And by 2032, they are going to implement for all the industrial sectors, CBAM measure.
If I can have one last question, Dr. Fish. Yeah, thank you so much. Just quickly, you were talking about CBAM. That's why I had this question because I was looking at the scoping report as well. We understand that there are regulations upcoming in EU which avoids, put carbon pricing into it and potentially crowd out. But I was just looking at the scoping study. I mean, the major exporters for Pakistan cement is towards Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, Oman, and such countries which don't have those carbon pricing markets as of yet. And it's difficult to see them in the near future of time as well. So what do you think about that in terms of, when their demand is, the major clients don't have that carbon pricing regulatory environment, how can that impact or influence or drive the local industries to switch towards, cleaner alternatives?
Yeah, so for the time being, probably your question is valid. Okay, but sooner or later, so every country has to opt for this CBAM, okay, kind of measures. Not exactly the same synonym, but it could be another one. So, but the thing is, another thing is that Pakistan also export cement to US and the European Union, but majorly it's going to US and the Gulf states, and then Sri Lanka and Afghanistan and all those things. So sooner or later, because by 2030, they are going to impose this tax. So, but this can be evaded if you have some local carbon taxes. So I guess it's a win-win situation for the industrialists, for the government of Pakistan as well, if they have introduced the local taxation, carbon tax mechanism. Yes, please. Walaikum assalam. Yeah.
हाँ क्वेश्चन है अभी भी यही क्वेश्चन है आपने तो माशाल्लाह सारे तरीके बताए कि ये चीज़ें हैं, ये स्टोरेजेस हैं। जो आखिरी मेथड है वो कैप्चरिंग वाला, CFC वाला, वो तो काफ़ी एक्सपेंसिव भी है, वो तो बिल्कुल लास्ट स्टेज है।
जी।
आया आपने ये किया है कि पहले जो आपने अभी खुद ही बताया कि सोलर पे कन्वर्ट हुए हैं और लोकल कोल पे कन्वर्ट हुए हैं और WHR वेस्ट हीट रिकवरी पे कन्वर्ट हुए हैं, तो आया पहले कितना कार्बन एमिशंस थे, अभी क्या है, इस पे भी एक आप डेटा बनाए। नंबर 1 क्वेश्चन।
Okay.
सेकेंड, ये तो कर रहे हैं इंडस्ट्री अपने लिए, अपनी तगदो कर रही है, उसका अपना भी फायदा है इकोनॉमिकली, और मतलब इकोनॉमिकल ऑप्टिमाइजेशन जिसको हम कहते हैं, कर रहे हैं। लेकिन इसमें गवर्नमेंट इनको कोई तवज्जो नहीं दे रहा। इनके सब कुछ इंसेंटिव होने चाहिए कि यार अगर आप ये CO2 कम करेंगे तो इतने इंसेंटिव से आपको टैक्स फ्री या जो भी है, वो चीजें है नहीं, ये आपने कर रहे हैं। उल्टा गवर्नमेंट उस पर कुछ इंसेंटिव्स नहीं है। जिस तरह अभी ये मैं देख रहा था, इसमें आपने RDF भी इंक्लूड किया हुआ है। RDF भी मैन इंडस्ट्री चला रही है, जो RDF चला रही है MSW जो है, तो उसमें गवर्नमेंट का कुछ भी नहीं है। उल्टा उस पर टैक्स ज्यादा हो रहा है कि आप ये वो उल्टा सफाई भी, एनवायरमेंट सफाई भी कर रहे हैं, लेकिन पूरे भी वो टैक्स ले रहे हैं। तो इसमें ये इनिशिएटिव होना चाहिए गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से या NGO की तरफ से। अगर इनको कोई इंसेंटिव हो तो ये और भी इसमें भरपूर हिस्सा लेंगे।
जी, thank you for your queries. The next speaker is going to give you detailed information how the Pakistan's cement sector emission has evolved over the time. Okay, so I will stop, keep this question for the next presentation probably. And the second thing, yes, I agree, there is this synergy between the stakeholders. The producer, the industrialist and the industry, and also even the regulator. So you didn't mention, but I know while during conducting this study, as per EPA's regulation, industry is not subject to utilize 100% of RDF. Okay, its limit is cap is I guess 40%, 30% or 40%, which is again a constraint. I mean, it's like it's towards like unsustainable man. Okay, so yes, I agree that should be harmonized and there should be incentives. And there should be facilitation like local carbon market. No, this is easy accessible for the industrialists to claim their carbon credit as per guarantee by the government of Pakistan. So definitely, this is the sector which need to be addressed. There exist the gaps. And if you will look into these, our report and the SDPI reports, there will be a policy recommendations. So which are just to advocate to bridge this nexus, to develop this nexus and to give incentive. It's a carrot and stick model actually that should work. So I agree with this.
Thank you, everyone. And just to add to the carbon market discourse, so my time working with the Ministry of Climate Change as a consultant, they on like very high demand from the industry, the government was interested in developing a mechanism and like a framework for especially the voluntary carbon markets, but hopefully we'll see compliance markets established in Pakistan in the near future. So I should move on to the study launch now. The first study is by Pride and Nust, and it is on the decarbonization of the cement production, exploring pathways to net zero in Pakistan. I would like to welcome Mr. Unib Lodi, who is a research assistant at the IESE, Institute of Environmental Sciences and Engineering at Nust. So Unib, if you could please. Oh.
Not this one. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Universal Lodi, and thank you for all joining us today. And
First of all, we will discuss about the challenges and opportunities for Pakistan in context of decarbonizing the cement industry of Pakistan. And okay, sorry. Okay, so let's have a look at our journey map. We will start with the current state of the cement industry, in which we will look at the state of how much cement industry is producing emissions, and with sorry, hello. Okay. And then we will look at the emissions in the cement industry, how much emissions are produced by cement sector in all scopes. And then we will look at the decarbonization strategies, and we will give the options, which are the best options to decarbonize our Pakistani cement industry. And then we have developed a roadmap for Pakistan for decarbonization, since government hasn't provided a roadmap for cement industry. So we provide, with the help of Global Concrete and Cement Association, we created a roadmap for Pakistan. Then we have the case study in which we have on biomass, in which we have given the cement industries opportunity for reducing coal and convert it towards agriculture. And then we have challenges and opportunities. These are the objectives of our study. The first is a baseline emission assessment, in which we will analyze the baseline emission by calculating the direct and indirect emission from Pakistan cement industry using IPCC guidelines. And then we move toward investment strategies, how much cement industries public is spending in cement industry, and how much government is investing in cement industries as well. And then we have look at the financial landscape and public spending, examining the current expenditures on decarbonization. And at the end, we look at the gap analysis, indigenous with viability, looking at the how much the options we will provide to the government in the roadmap, how much they are valuable to the cement industry. Let's have a look at this cement production capacity and dispatch comparison. If we look at from 1990 to 2023, the cement production capacity has increased from 8.82 million to 73 million, 73 millions. But the production and the capacity are not equal, actually. Since if we look at the factors driving growth, production in 1990s around 7.2 million metric tons, and production in 2021 around 57.43 million metric tons. But again, in 2023, it reduces to 44.58 million metric ton due to decrease in demand. And if we look at the decade-wise growth, if we go back in 1990s to 2000, it around modest 36% increase. But in the last decade, remarkably 348% of surge attributed to the infrastructure development. And exports started with 0.11 million metric tons in 2002 and rose to 14.28 million metric tons in 2021, declining again to 4.56 million metric ton in 2023 due to COVID-19 and trade issues. Local demand, local demand also dropped because of the COVID and all those things and issues with the Indian government. We have dropped from 43.15 million metric tons in 2021 to 40.01 million metric tons in 2023. These are the reasons, if you look at the capacity utilization, the the capacity and production ratio peaked at 92.7% in 1993. And again, right now it's only around 61% because of the low in demand of cement. And factors which include driving factors which driving growth, it all includes infrastructure projects like highway, dams, and energy infrastructure, and investment in the sectors. And then we have the challenges, like there's a limited market demand affecting actual production, and external factors like COVID and Indian trade tension impact the exports. And then we look at the opportunities, like potential for increase. We have the potential to increase if we could have good trade with other countries. This is the cement sector of Pakistan. If we look at the company-wise production, Lucky Cement is the largest cement producer in Pakistan with that 15.5 million metric ton, and Best Way the second. And Pakistan is the largest, 14th largest producer globally, and around 10th cement exporter. Per capita consumption, but still the per capita consumption is around 215 kg versus the global average at 550 kg. If you look at in the fiscal year 2023, the cement sector weight in the QIM was recorded at 4.7%. Okay. The vital metrics in Pakistan cement sector, local emission, if you look at the local emission, Pakistan cement sector is currently contributing around 44.5% to 52% of the Pakistan total industrial sector. Annual production, Pakistan is producing around 77 million metric tons, and the key export destinations are Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, Madagascar, etc. Bangladesh is right now importing 44% of clinker, and Afghanistan is importing around 60% of ordinary Portland cement. And Bangladesh is importing because there is lack of raw materials. And imported coal, if you look at the imported coal, national import stood at around 8.9 million metric tons, recording a massive decrease of 50%. This result due to the State Bank of Pakistan import ban on coal, but it doesn't affect the cost of the import because of devaluation of the dollar, devaluation of the rupees. And focus on the China, there's a turning point for coal and renewable. If we can, coal, if we cannot import coal, then we have to turn toward renewable, and coal peaks and fall signal the zero carbon future. Dispatches, the country south to north dispatches ratio are at 1-to-3 ratio in terms of total volume dispatches. Around there are 16 companies right now working in Pakistan, in which from 10 are in the north, 3 are in the south, and 3 are actually in north and south as well. This is the journal cement manufacturing process. It starts from raw material curing and then moves toward crushing, transportation, raw mill, and then clean and preheater, calciner, and cooler, then cement mill logistics. All of these steps, only around the majority of the emissions are from chemical calcination process and fuel. In chemical calcination, it's happened because of the decomposition of calcium carbonate, and in fuel because of the burning of the fuel. The fuel emissions can be reduced, but the chemical emissions can only be reduced either using carbon capture or changing the composition of the cement. These are the key statistics of Pakistan cement industry. Emission intensity at around 0.91 tons per ton cement. It includes all 3 scopes, like direct and indirect emissions. All these values are average of all the industries in Pakistan, not just one industry. And electricity consumption ranges from 90 kilowatt hour to 130 kilowatt hour per ton cement. According to Global Cement and Concrete and Cement Association, it requires around 113 kilowatt hour to produce Portland cement or white cement. And in case of Pakistan, there are some industries who are actually working with 90 kilowatt hour. Clinker to cement ratio, it depends on like how much clinker and how much gypsum are required. In this case, we are required 95% clinker and 5% gypsum to produce cement. Thermal expansion, these 1 ton of clinker needed 4.6 million BTUs, like it's around 4.8 gigajoule per ton to produce 1 ton of cement. It's around 160 kg of bituminous coal. It's quite high as compared to other nations, but this is the latest value provided by the Petra. These are the emissions from the cement sector of Pakistan. In Pakistan, scope 1 emissions around 49.5 million metric tons. It's from both calcination and from fuel combustion. From scope 1, 28.6 million tons of CO2 emissions are from calcination, and 21 million tons are from fuel combustion. And in scope 2 emissions, we have 5.1 million tons from electricity consumption. In case of scope 3, because of it's a very hard to understand topic, and we have very limited data, the average scope, the average emission per kilometer is around 0.654 million tons. Okay. Strategies for cement industry decarbonization. We have different strategies to reduce the cement industry, decarbonize the cement industry. Either we can use alternative fuels, clinker, we can change the formulas of the clinker, and renewable energy by to turn toward solar or wind. And we have circularity in cement industry, and energy efficiency and carbon capture and storage technologies. At NUST, Dr. Fahim also created 2 technologies under carbon capture and utilization. One is CO2 arrestor, and other is CO2 bin. The CO2, sorry, CO2 arrestor can actually 85% of the can be installed with the cars or the trucks and can captures 85% of the carbon, and it can capture around 20 to 25 kg of CO2 per day. As for the CO2 bin, it can be placed anywhere, and it can capture around 4 to 5 kg daily, which can show the huge potential for these new technologies. These are the marginal abandonment cost curves for various alternatives. We have the most is the decarbonated slag, and the other is a conversion from a long dry cleans to preheater calciner cleans. If you look at this table, if you can understand that the best option we have are the top two, but the blended cement also provides a very good option in reducing the carbon emission, but it costs a lot. But the marginal abandonment cost, the per ton to produce 1 ton cement is increased from $0.53. This is the case study we have developed to understand, like we have Pakistan is an agrarian country, and we have the coal over here is very low quality and like sub-bituminous, lignite. So we have to import most of the coal. So we can use rice, wheat, corn, which are highly produced in other regions and with cement plant, and straw. Like mostly Punjab and Sindh, we can use these crops to use as an alternative for coal. And we can replace around 35% coal with rice husk and rice paddy, and 20% with wheat straw and corn straw, requiring storage for year-round supply. And viability, rice husk alone not sufficient. Rice paddy could fully meet demand. Wheat, straw, and corn straw were also viable. Challenges: establishing a new supply chain of can also be challenging, because secondly, it's also because of the moisture content of the crops. It can be very harmful for the not harmful, but it can be challenging for the cement industry to totally shift toward these technologies. Benefits: it can save up to 5.28 per ton cement production cost and reduce carbon emission up to 0.0288 tons per ton cement, providing sustainable solution for agriculture waste and reduce cost, reduce carbon emissions, and provide a use for agriculture waste rather than open burning. This is the roadmap we have developed, in which we, with the help of Global Concrete and Climate Change Association, in which we develop, like in the baseline, we take the baseline of 2020 as a baseline and move toward the 2050 to achieve net zero emission by providing different technologies. Like in the first 5 to 10 years, we have to just optimize the optimize the waste heat recovery and installing solar powers or solar panels and wind technology. And then we move toward other legislation, and then by the end we can shift toward carbon capture utilization, or changing the composition of fuels. These are the challenges. Impact of interest rate, like Pakistan has around 22% interest rate, which is very challenging for industries to just invest in decarbonization option by getting 22% interest rate. Technical innovation, inflation, we have very low technologies, and because of inflation, it's very hard to go toward that way. And Pakistan's cement industry is heavily dependent on coal, and there is a limited fiscal because of the debt of the Pakistan economy. There's a very government cannot actually contribute to the cement industry because of the debt. These are the key opportunities which we can use, like utilizing waste heat recovery system, integrating renewable energy sources like solar panel, upgrading technology to enhance solar efficiency and reduce emissions, exploring alternative fuels and materials, advancing to cleaner clinker production technologies, introducing robust carbon pricing mechanism, like in CBAM has an incentive to accelerate the transition toward decarbonization. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Aneeb. So if anyone has any questions, please.
My name is Farooq Ahmed, and I am representing. Yes, thank you. So my name is Farooq Ahmed. I am head of department for Westway Cement, one of the largest cement producers in Pakistan, and we were part of this study as well. Some of the challenges highlighted by Uneeb and his team are known to us, but there are some things which were not highlighted as well as they are known to us, and I would like to point them out. सबसे पहली चीज alternate energy के अंदर हम अगर देखें तो एक जो एरिया हम अक्सर स्किप करते हैं that is municipal solid waste. There are tons of municipal solid waste lying on the ground जो कि एक eyesore भी है. They are a threat to the environment. वो उनकी जब सीपेज होती है तो उसकी वजह से हमारे अंडरग्राउंड वाटर रिसोर्सेज भी इम्पैक्ट होते हैं. और पाकिस्तान में इस वक्त ये जो म्यूनिसिपल सॉलिड वेस्ट है उसकी मैनेजमेंट के ऊपर कोई काम नहीं हो रहा. देयर हैव बीन अ लॉट ऑफ इंटरवेंशंस जो कुछ अर्सा चली और फिर वो नहीं चल सकी. तो अगर म्यूनिसिपल सॉलिड वेस्ट के ऊपर जैसे बाकी दुनिया में फोकस है, अगर हम थोड़ा सा फोकस करें तो इट कुड हेल्प अस रिप्लेस कोल and also get rid of these whole bunches of waste जो कि हर सिटी में हमारे पास दिन ब दिन बढ़ते जा रहे हैं and which is becoming a menace. तो एक तो उसके ऊपर काम करने की जरूरत है और उसके ऊपर सीमेंट इंडस्ट्री ने बाकी इनिशिएटिव्स की तरफ बहुत काम किया है. and the roadblock that we are facing is when we approach the government, वो हमें कहते हैं कि जी instead of paying us for getting rid of this waste, वो हमसे पैसे मांगते हैं कि वो हमें बेचना चाहते हैं उसको. सो दैट इज अ बिग इशू. बाकी दुनिया में आप जाएं तो कंपनीज को उसकी पैसे मिलते हैं, टैक्स ब्रेक्स मिलती हैं, एप्रिसिएशन मिलती है और हमसे डे डिमांड मानी. तो एक तो ये बहुत बड़ा इशू है व्हिच नीड्स टू बी लुक्ड एट, एंड अगर इसको भी हम ठीक कर ले तो हमारे बहुत सारे अलग और इश्यूज रिजॉल्व हो सकते हैं. दूसरा एक सस्टेनेबल सप्लाई ऑफ ऑल्टरनेट फ्यूल्स है जो मैंने पहले भी इसको हाईलाइट किया था कि हमने तकरीबन 25 to 26 ऑल्टरनेट फ्यूल्स जो कि आप लोग ने लिस्ट किए थे, कुछ नहीं है उसके अंदर, वो हम ट्राई कर चुके हैं एंड वी फाउंड आउट कि वो हमें मिल जाएंगे, वो हम उसको चला भी सकते हैं, द फ्यूल ब्लेंड एंड एवरीथिंग. बट द प्रॉब्लम इज कि एक सस्टेनेबल सप्लाई चेन नहीं है, जैसे उन्हीं ने भी पॉइंट आउट किया था कि उसकी सप्लाई चेन में इश्यूज हैं. तीसरा इशू रेगुलेटरी है, जैसे फहीम साहब ने भी इसको किया था कि 30% TDF के ऊपर ब्लॉक क्यों है. अगर आप सीमेंट इंडस्ट्री विच इज रिनाउंड इन द वर्ल्ड के उसके पास वो टेक्नोलॉजी है कि उसको एफिशिएंटली और सेफली बर्न कर सके, अगर आप उसको अलाउ नहीं करते तो होगा ये कि फिर वो किल्न में जाएगा और स्मॉल एंड मीडियम एंटरप्राइज में जाएगा हु डू नॉट हैव द रिसोर्सेज फॉर द एफिशिएंट बर्निंग ऑफ दिस TDF. तो ये कुछ एरियाज थे जिनको मैं हाईलाइट करना चाह रहा था. आई एम श्योर हमारे और भी कॉलीग्स होंगे सीमेंट इंडस्ट्री के who would be throwing more light on this subject. So that's all from my side.
सेग्रीगेशन है ही नहीं इसमें. आपका हेजर्डस, नॉन हेजर्डस, पॉलीथीन, सारे प्लास्टिक वगैरह स्कैवेंजर्स आते हैं वो उससे निकाल लेते हैं. जो हाई सीवी हमारे पास जो फ्यूल्स होता है वो निकल जाता है, उसमें गवर्नमेंट इन्वॉल्व भी, उनको पैसे मिलते हैं. तो इस पे भी काम करना चाहिए क्योंकि हमें, अगर हम इतने पैसे खर्च कर रहे हैं, सिस्टम लगा रहे हैं, यूरोपियन सिस्टम लगा रहे हैं, तो हमें फिर MSW जो पड़ा हुआ है वो भी सेग्रीगेट फार्म में या इस तरह प्योर फार्म में मिलना चाहिए कि उसमें जो हेराफेरी हो रही वो भी हमें वो भी ना करें. और फरूख साहब के साथ मैं एग्री करता हूँ, अच्छी बात है.
थैंक यू साहब. और आपने फिर से मेंशन किया चीजें. डेफिनेटली ये जो कैपिंग थी, दिस वाज योर फीडबैक एक्चुअली व्हिच आई केम अक्रॉस, get to know about this constraint by the regulator, which is unfair, I would say. Okay, because you guys, your organization volunteered to go for this municipal solid waste settlement or management, so it should be encouraged. And second, in our study, actually, whatever we recommended,
marginal abatement curves that was based on supply chain establishment. So we only preferred the options which have existing supply chain. For instance, we recommended we should go for crop residue burning as a alternative. It has a facet benefits because we are facing a lot of smog issue in Pakistan, mainly rice paddy fires. So if we channelize this rice paddies to the industry, not just cement, any other industry which is nearby. But luckily, we have two clusters of cement industry. One is in the north, one is in the south. So the Sindh and the Punjab is actually main producer of rice. So they can benefit from this. The south cluster can benefit from the Sindh rice paddies and the north one come from the Punjab one. So it's a very well-established supply chain is existing. So the need is it should be streamlined between the industry and the existing supply chain. And then some incentive should be there that industry should be motivated. So just to share with you that we have recently took initiative that we designed some studies at master and PhD level to address the municipal solid waste for energy production and for biofertilizer production. So it's like going to again multifaceted benefit out of that. Thank you very much.
Assalamualaikum. जब भी आप लाइसेंस 5% तक भेजाएंगे उसकी सीपी है 1900 और कोई भी ये 150 रेशो है अगर आप ये बढ़ाएंगे तो आपको पर डे अगर 70,000 पर डे आपको 900 टन चाहिए पर आवर आपको 40 टन पर आवर आपको चाहिए तो वो किस तरह कर सकते हैं उसके साथ आप
Sir, we did it. We actually calculated how much crop rice paddy residue is produced, how much corn stover is produced, how much wheat straw is produced in Pakistan. Rice husk we did not recommend because rice husk is widely used by the other industrial application. Cottage industry widely used कर रही है, वो आपको मिलेगी भी नहीं, उसकी price ज़्यादा हो जाएगी. So the best candidate is wheat straw, corn stovers and the rice paddies. तो basically एक पे आप rely नहीं कर पाएंगे. हाँ, आपको ईयर लाइन सप्लाई के लिए आपको मल्टीपल जो क्रॉपिंग सीजन्स हैं उसके ऊपर जाना पड़ेगा. आपको जब पोस्ट मॉनसून में आपको राइस पैडीज अवेलेबल होंगी, समर या में आपको व्हीट स्ट्रास होंगे. नहीं देखिए, हम कोल को इसलिए नहीं रिकमेंड कर रहे कि क्योंकि कोल की एमिशन ज्यादा है. ठीक है, आपका जहां पे 1 किलो कोल लग रहा है वहां पे हमारे 1.5 से 2 किलो राइस स्ट्रॉ लग रहा है, लेकिन उसकी एमिशंस भी कम है, उसकी कॉस्ट भी आपको कम पड़ रही है. ठीक है, अवेलेबिलिटी है सर. पाकिस्तान का जो एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर है हमने कैलकुलेट किया है जी.
मेरा ख्याल है इसको इस तरह से बाकी पार्टिसिपेंट्स भी इसमें हैं शामिल, उन्होंने पॉइंट अपना बना लिया. डॉक्टर साहब ने इस स्टडी के अंदर ये जो सारी बातें आप पूछ रहे हैं बहुत तफसील से इनका जवाब दिया. ये अवेलेबिलिटी का इशू भी इसमें है, कॉस्ट का इशू भी है, ट्रांसपोर्टेशन कॉस्ट जो है उसका इशू भी इसमें डिस्कस किया गया है बहुत तफसील के साथ. आप काइंडली इस स्टडी को पढ़ें तो इसमें फिर अगर आपके कोई कमेंट्स होंगे आफ्टर रीडिंग दिस स्टडी तो आप हमसे राब्ता करें. वी विल बी वेरी हैप्पी टू रिस्पॉन्ड टू योर क्वेश्चन. मगर इस डिस्कशन को थोड़ा सा लार्जर रहने देते हैं ताकि सारे लोग इसमें join.
Actually, we also have, Barasab, we also have comments from the participants joining us online. So, you raise your hand, you also put down a question. So, if you'd like to open up your mic and speak on it, yeah.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. That's Kynan from Tara Climate Foundation here. I just asked if you see a role for LC3 limestone calcinated clay cement in the decarb roadmap in Pakistan, and whether what the pros and cons and potential is. Thank you.
Yeah, if Aniba, Dr. Fahim wants to, respond.
Okay. So a lot of cement industry in Pakistan is working on LC3 cement, but the two challenges that we are facing right now, first one is market acceptability. If people are not willing to buy the LC3 cement, we cannot be producing it. So the market demand is a huge issue. People do not accept LC3 cement as of now as a replacement of the ordinary Portland cement that we are producing. So that is the first issue. The second issue is the sourcing of the raw material. The raw material required for producing LC3 cement is not widely available, and still studies are going on the sourcing and availability of the raw material. And the third issue is that it requires a lot of investment as well, because the current kilns that we have or the process that we have, it is not going to be a viable option, because we have done it and we found out that to produce LC3 cement, it's going to cost as much as producing the OPC cement. So it's not going to be financially feasible. So these are the three challenges that are being faced in Pakistan. And if somehow we can work on them, there is a lot of potential, and we are working on it for the past almost 2 years now. And we have successfully produced LC3 cement at our plants, and other plants have done it as well. Some are announcing it, some are not announcing it for different reasons, but yes, it is a thing in Pakistan when we have achieved it.
Assalamualaikum. I am Zia Hussain, representing Facto Cement Islamabad as a head of department. My question is with Mr. Dr. Fahim. They have taken a step to control carbon emission in their specific activity, carbon capture technology. I want to know about what is the way out to adopt this kind of technology for carbon capturing in industrial level. What will be the storage capacities and what will be the utilization in the market?
Indigenous solutions for very small scale, like starting from a car, going up to the industrial stack. So this technique, which we call it CO2 arrestor, it's a very viable option. Okay, we need some industrialist volunteers that provide us resources that we can upgrade to that, up to meet their needs. Recently, we have got some offer from Pakistan Tobacco Company. So we are going to have a joint venture with them, because they need to capture their boiler emission, the one thing. And if Facto is interested, we are more welcoming. So the scale, it can be upscaled to any level. Okay, now the second part of the question is, what is actually the way forward? Once we will have captured, what is the way forward? So this is the challenging point. So the technique we introduced it's not just capturing, it's a utilization technique, but it's a part of circular economy approach. So this produce will be utilized by the various industrial application as a feedstock. For instance, tanneries industry, for instance, glass, pesticides, and chemical making industry. They can easily utilize. The thing is, again, there is no market awareness that this option is also available. So we need to generate this supply chain. So in that particularly, we devise a model similar like the oil changing by your vehicles. Normally, आप क्या करते हो? आप जाते हो, you change an oil for free. Well, you pay the price of oil, but the services are free. So we had some discussion with the tanneries industry, but at present, they were very much willing. They required 1 to 2 tons per day. At NERST, we have just experimental setup. So we don't have that much potential. So if some industrialists take this initiatives, so the tannery industry can tab in. So that means there is dirt in the industry, that means another industry that can be. So it could be a good nexus for the different industries. So potential is there, willingness is there, so that could need to channelize this.
However, it will take many years because of its adaptation of innovative technology at cement sector for the carbon capturing and its storage also. And the main challenge will be its use in the open market.
Yeah, so it's not just a storage, it's utilization. So it's a complete removal from the system.
It will take many years.
Not really. I mean, if you are ready and the tender is ready, so you can have a patch up in like 1 month. And then the construction phase, like couple of months, and then you can start doing that.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Fahim.
Question is, nowadays we have no such kind of byproducts market from the cement sector in the Pakistan, from all over the Pakistan industries.
I
It
didn't get
will
that.
be utilized as a byproduct.
Yeah.
But in current scenario, we have no such kind of byproduct utilization in the market.
No, this tannery industry is from Pakistan. आपका जो byproduct है, that will be utilized by the tanneries.
It will be, not
Will
now.
be, yes.
Not now.
So they are willing. I have communication with the Tanneries Association, and there was one unit from Kasur. They said our demand is 1 to 2 ton at least a day. I said at NUST we don't have that much availability so far. So my point is that if 1 or 2 industrialists like PTC has taken initiative, if they are willing or you are willing, then this demand can be met through this one. So that means customer is already in the market. Demand is there. We need to just channelize this.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for your questions. We will have networking opportunities at the end. So maybe we can have a more fruitful discussion later on. We need to move on. First of all, I'd like to thank Kanan for being here, for joining us online. And thank you, Neve and Dr. Fahim, for the study launch. Now, I'd like to welcome my own colleague, Ms. Kuratulen, who is a research associate at Pride. And she graduated from NUST in Environmental Sciences, and she is currently working on integration of renewable energy. She is going to present an international perspective on decarbonization in the cement industry. Kurat, please.
Thank you so much, Amara. Hello, everyone. And thank you so much for coming. Uneep has shared the detailed results of our study. I'll just shed light on international perspective. According to United Nations, 68% of world's population are projected to live in the urban areas by 2050. As per United States Geographical Survey in 2023, China emerged as the dominant producer of cement, exceeding production of 2 billion metric tons. Following the India claimed the second spot with the output of approximately 400 million metric tons. Next, please. As the world continues to urbanize, the need for construction material is also increasing to meet these needs of their growing urban population, including for housing, transportation, energy sector. Energy sector. I can't read, actually. I need for sorry for inconvenience.
No worries, we have energy security problem in the country anyway.
So due to increase in the urbanization, the need for the construction material is also increasing over the period of time. We can see that from 1960 to 2022, the increase in the construction material has been increased. In 2021, the total production is 4.1 billion metric tons, but it was 1.38 during 1960. I'm sorry. Global carbon dioxide emission from the cement manufacturing reached 1.6 billion metric tons since the 1960s. Emission from cement production have surged significantly, more than doubling since the beginning of the 21st century. Next, please. Then carbon. Global Cement and Concrete Association was formulated in 2018 with the aim to contribute to sustainable future. Many European countries and other countries are part of this association. GCCA initiated the program of to achieve the net zero goals by 2050 by splitting some of the target from 2030 by utilizing the waste to energy integration of clean energy and renewable energy in their industrial sector. And alternative technologies, Mr. Farooq also mentioned that they are also utilizing these measures in their industry and meet the goals for net zero by 2050. To achieve these goals, the steps that has been taken are identify the technology pathways to net zero emissions by 2050, describe the enabling policies, accelerate decarbonization in the cement sector, establishing a concrete set of actions and projects, build the dialogue between policymakers and the industry towards policy engagement that will facilitate the implementation of decarbonization action, capture the attention of the financial institutions to finance sustainable projects, ensure industry receives support and recognition for its decarbonization efforts, help members progress on the decarbonization transition through key information, good practices, and successful collaboration. The Global Cement and Concrete Association, through an independent third party, gathers key data from the industries to transparently report annual progress in delivering sustainable commitments. This is called GNR and is a key tool in how key sustainability progress is monitored and reported. The headlines finding of 2021 GNR data are as follows. The 2021 cement industry GNR data shows that 23% of the reduction in CO2 per ton of cementitious has been achieved by since 1990s. The proportion of alternative fuels used in 10 times greater than the 1990s. Energy efficiency has improved by 19% by utilizing the waste to energy and integration of renewable energy in the industrial system. The Science-Based Target Initiative is a collaborative program that assists companies and organizations in establishing and reaching greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets that are rooted in significant scientific principles. This initiative offers a standard framework and guidelines for entities to synchronize these emission reduction objectives with climate science, particularly in accordance with the goals of Paris Agreement that are to reduce or to stay under 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature by 2050 as compared to the prior pre-industrial area, sorry. In 2023, the GCCA partnered with Leadership Group for Industrial Transition to develop the green cement technology tracker with tracks, public announcement of low carbon cement breathtaking technologies aligned to corporate climate goals consistent with the Paris Agreement. Public policy has an important role in enabling the cement and concrete industry to play its part in wider society, delivering a circular economy and net zero transition, while also addressing the biodiversity emerging and wider nature agenda. We are further looking forward to continue working with policymakers and stakeholders, as during our study, some of our industries and ministries also shared their data with us for the smooth study conduction. So we are looking forward to continue working with policymakers and stakeholders from across the belt. Environment and work with us help building sustainable world for tomorrow. Thank you. Sorry for my voice.
Thank you so much, Kurit, for such an insightful presentation. If anyone has any questions for Kurit, please. Yes, please.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much for presentation. First of all, I would like to appreciate Dr. Pokhar, ES3 and Pride for this combined study. And that is very useful for the policymakers. And we appreciate its outcomes and its findings. And this study covers throughout the process and alternate fuels. I also want to respond, Farooq Sahab, regarding their comments on RDF and TDF. Internationally जो हमारा इस वक्त जो सिस्टम है RDF या TDF के हवाले से हमने इनिशियल एक R&D की थी पाइनियर सीमेंट में, जो आपका पॉइंट था कि हमने कैप क्यों लगा दिया 20% या 30% TDF पे। तो उसमें हमने जब पाइनियर सीमेंट में 5% रेशो, 10%, 15, 20 के बाद जब हम 25 किया तो वो आपका जो सिस्टम है वो चोक हो गया, क्योंकि हमने 24 आवर इसकी मॉनिटरिंग की। उसमें पाक EPA की भी टीम थी, हमारा जो मोबाइल सिस्टम है वो भी हम लेके गए, EPA पंजाब की भी टीम थी और थर्ड पार्टी को भी हमने बुलाया हुआ था जब हमने ये एक्सरसाइज की थी पाइनियर सीमेंट में। तो वहां पे जाके हमारा जो सिस्टम है तो वो आपका काम नहीं कर रहा था। उस पे बाद जो है ना वो हमने मैक्सिमम वो कैप रख ली। जब ये हम TDF की गाइडलाइन बना रहे थे तो उस वक्त हमने यूरोपियन, इवन अमेरिका के अंदर 100% प्लांट ऐसे हैं जो TDF के ऊपर चल रहे हैं, यूरोप में भी है, इवन जापान में भी हैं जो वहाँ पे सक्सेसफुली कर रहे हैं और वहाँ पे उनके रिजल्ट्स भी ठीक हैं। दूसरा, हमने कंप्लाई करना होता है अपने जो हमारे स्टैंडर्ड्स हैं, नेशनल एनवायरमेंटल क्वालिटी स्टैंडर्ड हैं या प्रोविंशियल लेवल पे जो स्टैंडर्ड्स हैं, उसको भी हमने देखना है। जो पार्टिकुलेट मैटर है पर्टिकुलरली 2.5 और 10 कि वो कंप्लाइंट हो रहे या नहीं हो रहे, क्योंकि आपने फ्यूल तो डालना है लेकिन उसके इन्वायरमेंटल कंसर्न भी हैं, कंसिक्वेंसेस भी हैं कि उसके जो है ना इन्वायरमेंट के ऊपर क्या इम्पैक्ट्स होंगे। तो वो भी हमने इसको विजिलेंटली मॉनिटर किया था। तो उसके बाद फिर हमने इसके जो स्टैंडर्ड्स है इवन TDF की गाइडलाइन में भी दिया हुआ है कि कितने होने चाहिए और इसके स्पेसिफिक जो है ना वो स्टैंडर्ड्स हैं TDF यूज करने के हवाले से। और दूसरा जो पॉइंट है SRF या RDF का, तो अभी तक जो पाकिस्तान में जो म्यूनिसिपल वेस्ट है उसको प्रॉपर आप मैकेनिकली पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से उसको हम प्रोसेस नहीं कर रहे। तो यूरोप में बकायदा इसके ऊपर आप कह सकते हैं कि इंडस्ट्री है जो कि RDF को बकायदा प्रोसेस करते हैं। उसके अंदर प्लास्टिक भी होता है, पेपर भी होता है, बायोमास भी होता है और वो सेट करते हैं 1 इंच का, 2 इंच का और उसको कंप्रेस करते हैं लाइक ए फ्यूल, प्रॉपर उसको प्रोसेस करने के बाद। और यूरोप में ये RDF और SRF यूज हो रहा है वेरी सक्सेसफुली। तो यहाँ पे अभी ये है कि आप म्यूनिसिपल ले जाते हैं, उसकी ट्रांसपोर्टेशन भी है। अगर सीमेंट इंडस्ट्री इसको म्यूनिसिपल एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन के साथ टेकअप करे और एट सोर्स इसको प्रोसेस करे, वहाँ पे आप जॉइंट वेंचर भी कर सकते हैं, पब्लिक प्राइवेट पार्टनरशिप भी कर सकते हैं اور پروسیس کرنے کے بعد اس کو کمپیکٹ فارم میں آپ اس کو اپنی انڈسٹری میں لے جائیں اور وہاں پہ یوز کریں. ہم نے دیکھا تھا ڈی جی سیمنٹ میں ہم نے دیکھا ہے کہ آر ڈی ایف کا انہوں نے سسٹم لگایا ہوا ہے, ٹی ڈی ایف کا بھی ہے, ویکولان کا سسٹم ہے, جرمن سے انہوں نے امپورٹ کیا ہے, ایون 1 بلین روپیز کی انہوں نے انویسٹمنٹ بھی کی ہے, آٹومیٹک سسٹم ہے وہاں پہ, آر ڈی ایف پہ بھی ہے, ان کا ٹی ڈی ایف بھی ہے, لیکن وہ پراپر اس طریقے سے نہیں ہے. ہم نے رائس ہسک بھی دیکھی, یہ دوسرے جو ہے دوسرا میٹیریل جو اسٹڈی میں بھی مینشن ہے جو آلٹرنیٹس ہیں. تو ایک تو یہ ہے کہ ہمیں تھوڑا سا اس کو جو ہے نا میکنائز اور اس کو پروسیس کر کے ہم جو ہمارا ویسٹ جو جا رہا ہے, انفارچونیٹلی 10 سے 14% ہم ریسائکل کر رہے ہیں جو ہمارا میونسپل ویسٹ ہے. باقی 80% یا 85% ہمارے یہ ریسورسز ہیں جو کہ ہم اس کو ڈمپنگ سائٹ پہ بھیج رہے ہیں. تو یہ اگر ہم اس کو گورنمنٹ بھی اس میں ٹیک اپ کرے پلس آپ لوگوں کی سپورٹ بھی ہو, تو یہ ایک بڑا ایک جسے کہتے ہیں نا ون ون سچویشن ہے کہ ایک جو نیوسنس ہے میونسپیلٹی کا وہ بھی ختم ہو جائے گا, اور وہ جو ڈمپنگ کاسٹ ہے وہ بھی ہماری ریڈیوس ہو جائے گی. الٹیمیٹلی پھر جب برننگ ہوتی ہے میونسپل ویسٹ پہ تو وہ بھی انکریز کرتی ہے فار کاربن جو ہمارے CO2 ایمیشنز میں, پلس جو آپ کی میتھین ریلیزز ہوتی ہیں تو وہ بھی ریڈیوس ہو جائیں گے. الٹیمیٹلی وہ آپ کو جو فیول پڑے گا وہ بھی آپ کا CO2 جو آپ کی ڈی کاربونائزیشن اس میں بھی ہیلپ فل ہوگا, اور پلس جو ہم امپورٹڈ یوز کر رہے ہیں وہ بھی کم ہو جائے گا. اور پلس یہ جو ابھی میں اسٹڈیز میں دیکھ رہا تھا کہ 9.4 ملین میٹرک ٹن ہم مائن کر رہے ہیں لوکلی جو انڈیجینیس ہے, اور 6.5 ملین ٹن امپورٹڈ کر رہے ہیں. تو ہمیں یہ بھی دیکھنا چاہیے آن دی ادر ہینڈ کہ ہم لوکلی جو ہمارا کول ہے اس کو کیسے میکسیمم کیا جائے, اور جو امپورٹڈ ہے اس کو ہم سٹاپ کر لیں, کیونکہ جس طرح اسٹڈی میں ہے ویسے بھی ہم نے دیکھا ہے اس میں سلفر کنٹینٹس زیادہ ہیں اور اس کی جو کلوریفک ویلیو ہے وہ کم ہے. تو اگر ہم اس کو فوکس کریں, کیونکہ تھر میں جو اس وقت پلانٹ چل رہا ہے پاور پلانٹ جو ہے وہاں پہ وہ میں نے وزٹ بھی کیا ہے, تو وہ لوکلی بیسڈ ہے. آپ اس کی ٹیکنالوجی اچھی کر لیں, سپر کرٹیکل ٹیکنالوجی کر لیں. باقی جو سی پیک کے 3 پلانٹس ہیں وہ بھی میں نے دیکھے ہیں, سہیوال میں, ایک ہب میں, ایک کراچی میں, وہ تینوں امپورٹڈ بچا رہے ہیں, اور 10,000 میٹرک ٹن پر ڈے وہ کوئلہ امپورٹڈ یوز کر رہے ہیں. اب 30,000 ٹن پر ڈے ہمارے ملک میں آ رہا ہے, اس کی ٹرانسپورٹیشن, اس کی کاسٹ, اور وہ جو ہمارا ایک ریونیو باہر جا رہا ہے, تو اس کو ہمیں فوکس کرنا چاہیے کہ ہم اپنا جو ریونیو ہے جب ہمارے پاس انڈیجینس کول موجود ہے اس کو فوکس کریں, اس کے اوپر ٹیکنالوجی ڈیولپ کریں, سلفر کنٹینٹس کو کیسے ہم کم کر سکتے ہیں. تو یہ کچھ پوائنٹس ہیں, کیونکہ یہ ہائیلی جو ہے نا ایکسٹینسو یوز ہے کول کا ایز اے فیول ان سیمنٹ انڈسٹری. تو ہمیں اس پوائنٹ آف ویو سے بھی ہمیں جو گورنمنٹس اور سیمنٹ انڈسٹری کو بیٹھ کے کوئی وے فارورڈ پریکٹیکلی جو ہے نا ہمیں ایکشن کرنے چاہیے, کیونکہ تھریٹیکلی تو اب وہ ٹائم نہیں ہے, لیکن اب پریکٹیکلی ایکشنز جو ہے نا وہ ٹیکنالوجی بیس کی طرف جا کے ہم اس کے اوپر جو ہے نا مزید امپروومنٹ کر سکتے ہیں. تھینک یو.
Right, thank you so much, Dr. Zayum. We're gonna move to, thank you, sir. Good. We're going to move to the second half of our agenda, which is the SDPI study launch. The study is on Pakistan's cement sector, a road to decarbonization. I'd like to welcome Engineer Ubaidur Rahman Zia, who is the head of energy unit at SDPI, and also Ms. Saliha Qureshi, who is a research associate at SDPI. So, Ubaid, please.
Deep, Saliha, if you could just come to the podium, I'll just talk very briefly, and then there'll be Saliha will be presenting the study. So I think, first of all, thank you so much for everyone for joining us today. I think bilaterally with many of you, we have been discussing, going back and forth, we have been discussing a lot of challenges. And so again, today, we're gathered at a point where we are actually presenting some of the very good studies that we've done, wonderful studies and analysis done by the NERST and Pride team as well. I think what we're actually going to do is that we're sort of not try to repeat what has already been discussed. But yeah, let me just initially put up a bit of a platform that why we actually started. I mean, the whole process started. I mean, the study is just seeing in front of you. So I think almost 1.5 years back, when Dr. Zagam was also in the Ministry of Climate Change, we actually had some discussion, and it was sort of suggestion or request coming from the Ministry of Climate Change that when you actually look at Pakistan's nationally determined contributions, you can see actually that they currently didn't have any quantified targets for the industrial sector, because definitely we all understand the challenges were there. We had a lot of data challenges, because when we actually go towards any quantitative submission of the NDCs, you need a lot of data that mainly has to go towards emission factors and a lot of these things. So when we actually discuss this thing with any of the private sector, the challenge definitely comes up that I have been discussing with a lot of private sector, that definitely the private sector cannot very easily share those data sets until and unless there is a very protective and legal cover by the government of Pakistan present over there. And at the same time, the government of Pakistan, when we actually talk about its implementation arm, that is the Global Climate Change Impact Study Center, GCISC, or whenever they actually going towards the, revisions of the NDCs, they actually need those data sets. So there has been a lot of discussions, and there have been a lot of efforts, and I think at the end we'll also sort of introduce a joint platform which will be actually taking the private sector to sit with the Ministry of Climate Change and the GCISC to work a lot of these things out. And I think also, just to add very quickly, that these studies, they're not just, nothing is actually going to end totally over here. I think we have Pride with us, we have NUS with us, we have the private sector with us. So we'll keep on going into the different depths of these studies, just like Dr. Zaigam just highlighted, that we'll be picking each of these points. We'll be doing a lot of research across each of these points and taking, and let's see what, how we actually sort of make different regulatory sandboxes and what exactly is the way decided through these platforms as well. So that was basically the idea when we actually started the study. The Pride and the NUS mainly focus towards, going into the technical details. What SDPI has actually done is it's sort of more towards how different scenarios can actually be built in line with the different government commitments. It could be the two different scenarios under NDCs, what the government policies are, how they actually could impact different emissions, as well as the energy profiles of the cement industry. You already have those studies with you. I think we'll be discussing the models as well. Sariha will be initially highlighting some of the other aspects as well. So I think with this, we can go to Sariha to just sort of start it, and then they'll be coming back towards some more.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much, Ubad, for setting the scene and describing why we have done the study. And I also like to thank Pride and us that they have also conducted the study. And I also thank you, the stakeholders from the industry and academia and CSOs who have joined us today. And right now, this is just a scoping study. And when after the presentation, like we will come up with your suggestions, and we will add these suggestions in the next phase of the cement decarbonization study. So this is the scoping study on Pakistan cement sector, a road towards the decarbonization. And this is the oral roadmap, or the presentation roadmap that we have done. What is actually, a lot of things have been discussed, so I will not repeat that things. So the need assessment of the study, and why we have done, what are our objectives of the study, and the energy consumption, the fuel share, which has already been discussed so many times. And then after that, we also figured out or map out the levers which are actually potential for the Pakistan cement industry, and how they are the opportunity for the cement industry as well. And after that, Ubad will be presenting the modeling exercise which we have done on that. And it is the scenario-based modeling which we have done on the business as usual scenario we have taken, and the frozen scenario, as well as the policy and NDC scenario, and as well. Yeah, and after that we will present some of the policy recommendations which we have figured out, and yeah. So why we have done, what is the need assessment for the study? Right now, Pakistan has submitted 2 of its nationally determined contributions in 2016 and 2021. So in both the NDCs, there is a lacking of a decarbonization plan, and for the industrial sector especially. And it is also definitely missing in the cement sector as well. So this was the need. So that's why we have initiated this study, and definitely there is a limited qualitative and quantitative data that actually leads towards the decarbonization agenda of the cement sector especially. And also, there is when we are talking about the challenges, there are a lot of opportunities. Like when we are talking about the green in green industries, industrial greening of supply chains. So, like the textile sector has a green industrial portion. The consumers are more towards the green products. But when we're talking about the cement industry, so there is no such things that the consumers are demanding, as Farooq Saab has also mentioned, that there is no consumer demand as well. So there are also a lot of untapped opportunities that exist for the private sector as well. Yeah. So when we are talking about looking at the Pakistan Economic Survey, we can see that the industrial sector share is 20% towards the GDP, while when we look into the manufacturing, it's 67%, and 10% of the contribution of the cement sector is contributing right now to the economy of Pakistan. And overall, like 29 cement plants are in Pakistan, and their production capacity you can see, and the utilization capacity from the 2017 to 2022. So it has seen upward indication from 2017 to 2021, and now from 2022 to 23, there is a downward in the production and the utilization because of the economic uncertainty. These are the this has also been discussed earlier about the export destinations. Like the Bangladesh is leading. It's the key area where the exporting Pakistan exporting, and Portland's key figures for the export of ordinary Portland cement are Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Oman, and many others. So when we're talking about global emissions, it's 7%, and industrial emissions are 25%. And this is taken from the SDG 7 roadmap. So cement sector is currently contributing 44.5% to 52% of Pakistan total industrial emissions. And cement consumes around 65% to 70% of total coal in Pakistan. And it's very limited discourses available because it's one of the hard to abate sectors of the industry. So this is the breakdown which also been discussed earlier. So the cement share in the industry is 61%, energy emissions are 45%, process emissions are 55%, while the natural gas consumption is 3.9%, 1% in other fuels, and 40.5% coal consumption. So these are the objectives of the study which we have done. Firstly, we have analyzed the status quo of cement sector in Pakistan, the growth and decarbonization efforts. Then we did the benchmarking of the mitigation strategies with the globally identified decarbonization efforts. Then we have done the modeling exercise. And after that, we have like figured, note down the opportunities and challenges that actually lead towards the decarbonization drive. This is the research methodology which we have adopted. This is a mixed methods approach. The primary data was being conducted with the key informant interviews with the stakeholders from the industry, cement industry, and the secondary data from the desk review and the policy and regulatory landscape which actually exists in Pakistan right now. And finally, the modeling exercise, and then the policy recommendations after that. This is the stakeholder consultation map, which we have done over the course of the study. We have one public-private dialogue on Pakistan cement sector pathways to deliver net zero commitments, in which we have figured out what is the actually right now the current situation the cement industry have, what are the opportunities they have, and what are the challenges they are facing right now. And then we had a special lecture with some of the cement industry, and I think Power Cement was one of the leading industry that has put us request, and they present their findings. And then KIIs, which I mentioned earlier. This is the cement manufacturing process, and you can see that the major consumption, energy consumption, is from the kiln process, and the CO2 emissions are majorly from this kiln preheater, precalcinator process. Cement sector, when we, as I talked earlier, that as compared to the textile, cement sector does not have the external pressure, consumer pressure of the green products or green supply chains. So it is one of the hard to abate sectors, and very limited discourse is available when we are talking about the coal, because you can see that coal is sharing 80% of the fuel. So annual production capacity of the cement in Pakistan is 70 million tons, and it is expected to grow by 5 to 7%. And it's, as I already mentioned, that its contribution to economic growth is 10%, and key export destinations are Bangladesh and others. Some of the cement plants have already adopted the waste heat recovery systems, and mostly are switched have adopted the renewable energy technologies, and low, because there is a limited electrification in the process and a higher proportion of clinker, the most carbon intensive process. And when we are comparing the Pakistan value with the global average, the thermal energy consumption is 3.9 gigajoules, and the global average is 3.45. So, and if we want to, net zero target is 3.2. Well, when we're talking about the electrical energy consumption, it's 90 kilowatt kilowatt hour per ton of cement, and global average is 100. And clinker to cement ratio is 0.95, while the global average is 0.72. And emission intensity is 0.79, while the global average is 0.62. So the levers for the decarbonization in Pakistan, as discussed, in energy efficiency, alternative fuels, clinker substitution, renewable energy and process electrification, CCUS, and circularity in the cement industry. When we're talking about these levers, when they are applied, these are estimations which we have taken from the stakeholder consultation. So when these levers are applied in, should be applied in the Pakistan context. So when we're looking at the energy efficiency, it's easy to apply and it's low cost. So so we are looking for the economical things that actually work for the industry and for the consumer. Alternative fuels, it's hard to apply and its cost medium to high. Clinker substitution is medium, while its cost of application is low. And the novel cement is hard and its cost of application is high. And CCUS is also hard to apply, and cost of application is very high. So this is the range abatement cost, which we have taken from the McKinsey report, that you can see that upper range and lower range of the clinker substitutions, alternative fuels, and new technologies. And with this, I would request Ubaid, please come over here and explain the modeling part. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So I think, do we have Skynet online sitting with us? I mean, I just want to check if we should continue in English or can I speak otherwise as well. So I think the basic idea when we actually started modeling was that SDPI was actually one of the organizations that developed Pakistan's roadmap for SDG 7 that was actually developed in collaboration with the Ministry of Energy Power Division. It was the focal entity was the Private Power Infrastructure Board, and also in collaboration with United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. And so while actually the tool that we actually used for the modeling was the low emissions analysis platform, the LEAP model, the same tool that is also currently being used by GCIC, Global Climate Change Impact Study Center, for its modeling parts, as well as the Ministry of Planning, Development and Special Initiatives that is also using the LEAP model for the development of the integrated energy planning, and also a lot of different studies that are being done. So if you can, Hamza, if you could just sort of move to the next slide, I guess. So this is basically actually the methodological approach. The way the LEAP actually works is that the LEAP basically analyzes that any policy intervention on any policy change or any change in the use of different technologies, how they can actually impact any sector's future projection, whether it's of the energy, whether they are of the environment, emissions, or even the how much cost would actually be needed if we have to achieve a particular pathway. So that's basically what the LEAP model actually does. As for the industrial sector, how we actually used it was to sort of analyze that based upon the current scenario, what the industry currently stands, and then looking at what objectives do we either have to achieve at the end of the day. It could be as such the net zero targets by 2050. It could be the NDC targets by 2030, or we can use any projection methodologies that can actually project what the future could potentially look like in the presence of different assumptions or in the presence of different driving parameters as well. So what we actually do, the way it actually works, it uses a bottom-up modeling approach that it actually, for calculation of Pakistan's total energy, for example, if it's the residential sector, it goes down from the utilization within a single bulb to utilization within a household, and then the society, and then the whole country. For the industry, it works pretty much in the same way. I'll be going down into the details of the model later as well. But yeah, that's pretty much the model that we actually use. I mean, this all starts with the modeling of the current scenario, which actually means what is the current cement industry currently consuming and what has been its previously projected pathways, what has been the historic consumption, and what growth rates have they been increasing over the past year. And a lot of macroeconomic data sets are required. If any one of you actually wants to visit the whole model, if those who are using, actually, I know a lot of people sitting here do use LEAP in the studies as well. So if anyone is interested in the model, the link of the model is also present within a study. You can download the LEAP file, and that can also be run on your own laptops as well. So if anyone wants to understand what the data sets have been used, you can always revisit the model as well. So a lot of macroeconomic data sets are required. That includes actually the gross domestic product, GDP calculations, the consumptions, what has been the commercial floor space, how that has actually been improving, because we didn't actually find a very good sort of interrelation of the cement industry's energy demand with the gross domestic product, GDP, but it was more much closely linked with the increase in the commercial floor space. So now going towards then what we actually do is that to those energy consumption patterns, you sort of apply what different emissions are, how much these processes are, what energy are they consuming actually currently. And then based on those growth patterns, the model itself projects what the future demand of the industry would actually look like. Then you actually come up with different sort of assumptions, as well as different sort of user constraints that, okay, the NICA has actually put up the target that by 2023, they have to increase the energy efficiency by X%. And on the contrary, and we can also do is what we can move in an opposite direction, that I'll actually limit the model that this is the NDC target. That is that you have to reduce the overall emissions from this sector by 15% or by 50% by 2030. And the model will itself recalibrate to see how different levers would actually have to respond to meet that constraint. For example, just like Saleh talked about energy efficiency. So the model in itself, again, a lot of data sets have to go in. We'll be showing you as we go forward. So the model itself can also recalibrate it as well. So now the next step was that what scenarios should actually be developed and how these scenarios should actually go forward. So what we actually did was we actually developed sort of these 4 to 5 different scenarios. One was the reference or the business as usual scenario, which means actually that as per the current status of the cement industry and how it's actually operating, its different energy emissions intensity figures, and all that, if those remain same or improve at not remain same, if they improve at the same rate in which they have been improving historically, what the output would look like. That's actually pretty much the business as usual scenario. Then it's the next one is the frozen scenario, which means that no improvements even as per the historical data set. Then EPS is the energy policy scenario, which means that in the presence of different policy interventions that have been put forward, we pretty much previously we had the NICA strategic plan of 2023 that we initially used in the model, but then the NICA's recent policy supersedes that. The next two are NDCs are the national determined contribution scenario, which means that by the end of the day, the model has to actually achieve that figure of 15% reductions, although the target is not particularly for the cement industry, but we actually have taken this assumption that if cement industry has to achieve that NDC 15% reduction target, how should different levers actually respond to that? Then we all know the net zero, that is by 2050. So this is how the LEAP model actually looks like. You have to enter a lot of different data sets. There are a lot of which we actually had a support from a couple of private sector entities. Especially the Power Cement has helped us a lot with the quantifiable data. The Best Way and other cements have very much helped us with how different drivers should actually be projected. So again, thanks to all of those as well. And a lot of work that was already done under the SDG 7 roadmap, we have sort of brought into this model as well. So now just a very quick overview of what different scenarios actually entails. So when we actually talk about the business as usual scenario, when we analyze the historical data, so that actually what it actually projected was that under this scenario, we actually had taken that historical energy intensity improvements, 7% improvements by 2030 and 19% by 2050. So these are mainly the 4 key levers which we have actually modeled. For fuel switching to alternate fuels by 2030, it's almost set at 10% and 20% by 2050. We haven't, under the business as usual scenario, we haven't actually taken any clinker substitution, and we haven't actually accounted for any use of the carbon capture and storage technology. I think we already had some debate that it's currently not the pipeline. If in the future we actually go forward, the prices starts dropping, its commercialization start happening, so how that's actually going to change. Frozen scenario, just like I mentioned, everything is kept constant. In energy policy scenario, we previously had the NECA strategic plan, which we actually used for these different changes, but then NECA's new policy supersedes it. The use of carbon and capturing storage technologies come in an optimized form in all of the 2 scenarios that we have actually developed. One is the NDCs, and the second one is the net zero scenario. And that's basically to understand that if the rest of the drivers, even if Pakistan able to achieve energy efficiency improvements or environmental or the use of fuel switching as per the global targets of net zero, what would be the remaining amount that has to come up so Pakistan can relatively achieve that goal. So carbon capture and utilization, there hasn't been any targets given from our end, but the model has been optimized to understand what the output could actually look like. And then it's a net zero scenario, energy efficiency improvements. I think Saleh has already shown you the key factor that what IEA different models indicates, what International Energy Agency indicates, that what different models should actually look like. So just very quickly going through the results, this is the result, LEAP modeling results of the energy demand profile. You can see how different scenarios are actually different from each other, that when we actually talk about the business as usual scenario, the current energy industrial demand is expected to increase from almost 7.6 MTOE in 2023 to around 9.4 by 2030 and almost 19 by 2050. So when we actually talk about the, you can also see that the lines for the business as usual scenario as well as the current policy scenario are pretty much the same. That is because basically no much difference is actually coming up, even if we apply the provisions that were proposed by NECA. So that's a very minor difference. You cannot even actually see, but once you go into the model, you go into the tables that are present over there in the study as well, you can see that there might be some bit of difference as well. The frozen scenario is definitely going to has the highest demand, which means that if the industries continue with the same practices, this is the energy demand reduction that they'll be able to achieve. So the net zero indicates the lowest energy demand profile, depicting an annual energy demand of 9.4 MTOE by 2030 and 16.8 by 2050, which means that if the cement industry of Pakistan actually achieves the energy intensity or efficiency targets as per the global IEA models or as per the net zero requirements, so this is the energy reduction they might be able to achieve. So same is the case shown here that by 2050, the net zero scenario, the energy demand in the net zero scenario should be met by almost 30% utilization of biomass, 15% electricity-based power, and a higher dependence on natural gas as the resource. So yeah, so I mean, let me just very quickly at this point highlight that this is not something that we're actually proposing, but this is something that the model is actually telling us that if you actually have to achieve these targets, this is the minimum requirement, or this is the fuel share that actually has to be achieved. And this scenario and the model that we actually developed, it definitely provides just one of the roadmaps, again, just based upon the assumptions that I previously mentioned. This is how the emissions profiles are going to look like. I mean, under the business as usual, definitely the frozen scenario would actually going to lead to the highest emissions. And when we actually talk about the business as usual scenario, the emissions are expected to increase from almost 25.6 million metric tons to almost 34 by 2030 and 68 by 2050. And just like as per the prescribed or assumed constrained targets of the NDCs, the emissions by 2030 have to be will be limited to 29.2 and 38 by 2050. So this indicates that emission reduction of almost 5 metric ton by 2030 and 30 metric ton by 2050 will actually be required. And again, it follows the very same trajectory at the NDC scenario till 2030. And then the net zero scenario, What we have actually modeled is that it follows the same trajectory as the NDC scenario till 2030, but as per its constraints, the emissions have to sort of drop down to zero by 2050, and I'll explain later how this is actually supposed to happen. So now this is actually important, and in the context that the industries, how they actually have to respond to each of these key levers that we're actually talking about. So when we actually start with energy efficiency, I think Saleh very rightly mentioned that Pakistan's industry has actually done some good work around the energy efficiency side, particularly when we actually talk about the cement sector. Definitely, we do have two sort of different industries when we actually talk about the informal sector. So there are definitely industries that are not up to that mark, but when we actually talk about the big players, so in energy efficiency, a lot has been already been done. Still, some potential does exist, but as per the emission reduction requirement is concerned, so being an important driver and has a currently limited potential to drive decarbonization drive in industry, and that's basically because a lot of work has already been done. Fuel substitution, comparatively, when we actually talk about, has one of the very highest potential of decarbonizing particularly in the context of Pakistan cement industry. The dive is already there. I think Dr. Zagam also just recently mentioned that there have been some initiatives, there have been some progress going around. It has to further develop if these targets are to be made. So you can already see how much of emission reduction the impact of fuel substitution can achieve under each of these scenarios, whether it's the net zero scenario, there are two figures given. One is for 2030 emission reductions that can be achieved, and the second one of 2050. And that's mentioned for each of these scenarios. When we actually talk about the impacts of clinker substitution, they're currently not, I mean, definitely some work is being done at the theoretical level, but not a lot has been going on the clinker substitution side. The potential definitely does exist. You can already see the potential in both the NDC as well as the net zero scenario mentioned over here as well. And what we actually studied, and I think I also discussed this with a lot of colleagues, that it does have a lot of potential to actually appear as one of the alternates in a short to medium term as well. I think a lot has been discussed here, and go into the carbon capture and storage is one of the most critical element, how it is, again, not a very commercial technology as of now. That's only the reason we haven't actually modeled it in the business as usual or the current policy scenario. But it is actually going to play a role if Pakistan cement sector has to achieve the target that is set overall for the Pakistan's overall emission profile in the NDC scenario. So again, that's a limitation under which we're actually operating. And definitely, if you have to achieve the net zero, the most important indicator, I mean, let's just sort of look into this graph. This explains the whole modeling picture of the decarbonization roadmap. So what we actually see is that, I mean, this is for the 2050 target. I mean, the emissions are expected to be here. And if we have to sort of drop them down to achieve the net zero target, then the most key role has to be played by the carbon capture and storage technologies till 2050. And given that it's extremely difficult to achieve these targets or have such a high rate utilization of the carbon capture and storage technologies, I mean, we shouldn't be actually taking things from a net zero perspective. It has to be a different decarbonization drive, because that currently, as per the model, is a very ambitious target to even speak about. Secondly, definitely the fuel switching we already talked about has a comparatively good potential. The clinker substitution has a good potential, and they're all based upon what the model is actually telling us. So the local solutions to drive the pathway does exist. However, this would actually require a very strong regulatory support and the push from all of the key stakeholders coming in. So now that was pretty much the technical side. Let's just deep down what the reality actually looks like. Where do we currently stand? I mean, let's sort of look into from the angle of the private sector. I mean, the thing is that just starting from the statement that the money follows reward, the private sector is here to make for its business. Definitely, what the way the private sector is actually going to move towards is whatever that makes an economic case. Definitely, that's pretty much the area. So if we're actually asking any of the private entities or these sectors to sort of make a transition, you have to give, I think it has been being highlighted since the start, that you have to give them that necessary space or those incentives under which they can actually transition. So, but if we actually look into, I think this was the first question that was raised into the current policy and regulatory support, let me at the point mention that SDPI is actually sort of trying to push for it. We do also have a presence in the Pakistan Climate Change Council as well. So we're sort of trying to push, but a lot doesn't exist currently for the cement sector to undergo this transition. There is an absence of performance-based standards. When we actually talk about the cement industry, there are a lot of diverse activities and there's a very limited ownership when we're actually talking about these decarbonization drive. I think that was the first point which we actually talked about was the legal cover and trust deficit around the emissions reporting that needs to be particularly addressed. High transmission cost and a very limited business case currently exist. And also there's definitely shouldn't be saying the reluctance, but awareness around different new models that exist that may be utilized. So these are some of the very key and pertinent challenges that needs to be addressed. But at the same time, with the challenges, the opportunities definitely exist. I think a lot has been talked about by Dr. Fahim as well. Let me just quickly touch upon a few of those. The potential of carbon trading has been discussed. I think Basit was initially right when he mentioned that when we're actually talking about the CBAM, then that's pretty much as of now is for the industries that have that export, that where the exports are actually going towards the EU. Because I mean, when you actually compare the case of cement as compared to cement of any case of any other industry such as textile, they actually had a very strong a case as well as a business case to make that transition because that's an export oriented sector and what has been going into the countries where those export compliances that's actually going to play a key role. But for industries such as cement or steel, that pressure, the pressure of the green products currently does not exist. But with the CBAM, it actually provides opportunities for making the transition that if any industry is looking to expand that's export base. So this is something that's actually going to take the opportunity. Then a lot of global financing channels do exist that must be utilized. Technology shift or the use of green cement, a lot has been done. I think the power cement is also working around it, circularity in the cement industry. I think Dr. Fahim has highlighted it very well, and also Dr. Zegam has mentioned what challenges do exist and opportunities, more importantly, what do exist, and definitely the raising awareness for the low carbon cement as well. So I pretty much touched upon the challenges. I think when we actually talk about the use of RDF and the TDF, I think the first thing which actually comes up is that any potential changes in the supply chain or any efforts to make the supply chain actually has a cost associated with, and that cost has to be mitigated. So if that is something that needs to be, I think a couple of partners, even the private entities in Pakistan are doing some work. We've seen a good number that has been achieved by some of the cement plants as well. But I think if we have to actually sort of take it to the next level, then there is a need for a tipping fewer incentives such as tax breaks for the use of TDF and RDF. And it's good to, Dr. Zaidam, very good to hear from you that you have the work you have actually done around that. Limited R&D around low carbon solutions. I mean, fully understand that a couple of organizations, I think Dr. NUS is also doing some work. The COMSET has already done some work around that as well. So we have to sort of expedite that and enforce quality standards for waste management and RDF production. The technology cost, we all agreed that is very high. So there's need for very targeted awareness and knowledge awareness session to create a market pull for that. I think one of the key, because we have Chirag Simin sitting with us here as well, I think one of the very key points which we haven't discussed in detail is that when we're actually talking about this renewable energy transition industrial sector, one of the very key element that actually comes up is the power wheeling reforms. I think, sir, you can also better highlight because Chirag Cement is someone that has actually gone through this process. But now we're actually having a lot of challenges when we actually talk about the wheeling regulations because now they're being governed under the competitive trading bilateral contracts market. There's a lot of discussion, even the discos and other entities have put up some legal cases within the court as well. I mean, there are a lot of discussion that is going around the use of system, I mean, what the system charges are actually going to be, because we're actually sort of trying to understand, come up with a figure that's actually viable for all of the key stakeholders. Because without that, without the power wheeling reforms, the industry is actually facing a very big challenge of very high energy prices that needs to be addressed. So a limited consumer demand for green cement that we have already, I think, addressed. Fluctuating business environment. even if we actually talk about the cement, so the key, what is actually going to happen, what pathways currently does not even exist in the official policy documents of the government of Pakistan, whether it's the NDCs or the LTLEDs as well. Definitely, the opportunity for mobilizing finance to different green transition funds, green climate bonds, and other financing tools does exist, but that again, firstly needs the discourse present within Pakistan. The State Bank is very near to come up with the green financing taxonomy and all, but as of now, there's a very limited capacity to tap into these funds, not only not only just by the public sector, but also within the private sector as well. And we have to sort of embrace these financing approach. Efficient allocation of resources has to be there. Market-based mechanisms we've already briefly touched upon. Circularity context is definitely coming up. Dr. Fahim has already talked about it. I'm sort of trying to negotiate. We can go to the discussion part. NICA, Ministry of Industries and Production, has to play a very important role. We do have colleagues from NICA sitting in with us today as well. They have, I mean, I know the last discussion we have, they did mention that they're actually coming up with these different standards and I think minimum energy performance standards around the cement, but that is something that is yet to be sort of come. So if they have to anything add to it, please feel free to do during the discussion as well. So this is pretty much the technological challenges around the RDF and the TDF. EP has already done some work. I mean, just like it talked about, some industrial equipments or the industries do use the outdated equipment. Industrial waste and geopolymers are pretty much the challenge. The capacity challenges definitely exist. Limited adoption of green cement, circularity implementation, I previously touched upon all of these as well. So just ending it with this slide, that what's actually going to forward is whenever there's a business case for anything to go forward, there's, I mean, that's how the things are actually going to work. So, I mean, what has to happen is that the private sector has to sit with the public sector, and the public sector has to definitely provide that regulatory cover as well as the legal covers, as well as the legal and that support to enable that shift in which way we can actually have a very strong collaboration. I think from the two studies that we have discussed here today, and a lot of learned people from the private sector, the expertise do exist, but we need to have this coordination mechanism under which it can be actually taken forward. Definitely ammonia is as the solution as well. Green hydrogen definitely does not have a very strong case in the hard to abate sector, but again has, I mean, the thing is that energy technology, or what we say, that there's a cost of being a lagger in each of the industrial transformation. There's a very strong cost for that. Pakistan has witnessed that in its energy sector. There was a time when a lot of things that are currently not making sense now did make sense few years back. And let's not create a scenario where we actually go down under the same road in the different sectors as well. So let's join hands for a common cause of energy and climate action. I think Dr. Wakar highlighted in the very start that SDP is actually going to initiate, launch an initiative which will be called the Pakistan Industrial Decarbonization Initiatives, in which we'll also be bringing in the Ministry of Climate Change, the GCISC, the private sector, to sort of, again, it's going to be a joint working group in which we can actually take each of these challenges as well as the recommendations going forward. So with this, thank you so much, everyone. I think if we can just open the floor for discussion. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ved, and thank you, Saleha. So please, if you have any questions for either of the two.
It's okay. Yeah. Sir, please.
इंजीनियर उबैद साहब बहुत मज़ेदार ओके तो बहुत मज़ेदार प्रेजेंटेशन। मेरे दो कमेंट्स हैं। एक तो ये कि ये जो प्राइवेट सेक्टर के लोग हैं, इंडस्ट्री के लोग हैं, फॉर प्रॉफिट वाले हैं, इनको हम लोग वैसे इनफॉर्मली भी देखें ना कि यार ये सीमेंट वाले लोग हैं। आई डोंट वर्क फॉर द सीमेंट इंडस्ट्री, लेकिन भाई इन लोगों ने अपने फाइनेंसेस डाले हैं, बंदे हायर किए हैं, काम कर रहे हैं, कोई बिजनेस भी कर रहे हैं, फॉर प्रॉफिट है, अपने अच्छी बात है। बट इनको जरा देखें ना कि इनको आप परेशानी में न डालें। जो आप उनको कुछ अगर एडिशनल इंसेंटिव्स नहीं दे सकते हैं तो उनको खामखा तंग तो न करे ना। एक तो ये कमेंट है। दूसरा ये है कि वैद साहब आपका जो पॉलिसी रिकमेंडेशंस है उसमें एक चीज जो मैं समझता हूँ कि apart from all you have listed and spoke about, एक चीज है, ये सीमेंट के डिमांड को कैसे कम करें। उनको बुरा लगेगा सीमेंट वालों को। और भाईजान आप सड़क, जहाँ सड़क नहीं है, आइसोलेटेड प्लेसेस इन पाकिस्तान, आप सड़क बनाते हैं और तीसरे दिन वहां पे सीमेंट पहुंचता है। वहां पे पत्थर पड़ा हुआ है जो कि एनवायरमेंट फ्रेंडली है, वो किसी जमाने से वो यूज कर रहे हैं। तो जहाँ जहाँ दूर इलाके हैं वहां भी सीमेंट पहुंच रहा है। तो कोई पॉलिसी डिसीजंस हो, कोई कंस्ट्रक्शन के कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट हो, कोई कुछ हो भाई, वो भी करें ताकि ये डिमांड जो है ये कम हो जाए और उन लोगों पे कोई कवानीन हो वो ये सीमेंट इस्तेमाल नहीं करें। अच्छा, सीमेंट इस्तेमाल करते हैं, क्या होता है गर्मियों में जी, पत्थर के घर हैं। अच्छा, उसमें तो फैन नहीं था, अभी सीमेंट के घर बना रहे हैं, ब्लॉक्स बना रहे हैं। अच्छा जी, फैन नहीं है, फिर बिजली नहीं है, फिर जी सर्दियों में देखें हीटिंग के मसले हैं। सो बहुत शुक्रिया जी आप लोगों का।
Gee, very well. I think for the second part, I'm not the right person to respond. But if anyone from the private sector actually wants to respond to it, yeah, please go ahead.
We are not teasing them at all.
Yes, exactly.
We provide opportunity कि उनको वो जो तंग हो रहे हैं वो हम बताएं पॉलिसी मेकर्स को कि वो तंग हो रहे हैं। ठीक है। और सेकंड, आई टोटली एग्री कि जैसे मैंने मेंशन किया था 12 स्ट्रेटेजीज, उसमें सस्टेनेबल अर्बन प्लानिंग, दैट इज एक्चुअली द की that will address your the second point as well. So over to you, Web, please.
No, I think that's pretty much it from mine. I think just to very quickly, I have received some online comments, so I can very quickly add to that, that this study or this model cannot actually be directly used by the GCISC for its, updated NDCs. It has to sort of, it needs a lot of in-depth data analysis. So this is something that the private sector actually has to sit down and with the GCISC and the Ministry of Climate Change and address those data issues that further exist. This, as for the emission, it used the built-in database of the LEAP model that exists. Yeah. So going forward,
So for excellent presentation of that, by the way. So I will slightly disagree to make a point that the carbon capture and storage is a very challenging and it's a very, very tedious job. To be honest, I am very much advocate of this, and it's a very there are a lot more simple solutions out there. I just quote, I'm not going to advertise my technology. I'm just going to give you a solution. The solution X we proposing for this technology, it just costs you a couple of rupees per liter. So, I mean, it's really very pretty simple and straightforward solution available. So the thing is that myth need to be debunked about, I mean, it's not a rocket science, it's a simple solutions are available, but the motivation need to be there, awareness should be there. Thank you.
yes, Dr. Fahim, I completely agree. I'm also sort of a supporter of the carbon capture. In fact, just last night, I was actually going through I was sort of trying to analyze what is actually happening, and I could actually see a lot of work that is being done in a number of industries as well. And I'm also a very much advocate, but this is something that I initially thought that as of now, if we actually talk about the carbon capture and storage, utilization and storage CCUS, then the number of commercial projects that are there are very limited. I don't think it's even have crossed the number of 1,000 projects all across the world. I mean, when we're actually talking about the major projects that exist. So pretty much that was what was driving a recommendation. But I think a lot of scope exists and we need to work and really look forward, Dr. Fahim, because we have been, this has been discussed into different platforms. So we really look forward if you're working on it since then, this is something that can be pushed forward. So yeah, I think it sounds wonderful. I'm all with you on this one. So I think we had a question at the back, please. Yeah. Sir will be coming to you.
Thank you so much for such a great presentation. I'm Dr. Waqas Ahmed Khan. We just have established a cement plant industrial specific standards for Punjab, for Punjab government. The project was funded by and supported by the World Bank, SPNIU. We have a lot of meetings with Mr. Farooq Saab and other members from the cement associations. We have presence there. So just have a one simple suggestion. Just that like the industrial sector, they're the private sector. I'm adding that all the private sectors in all the other countries, they sort out the projects. They sort out the research project to the consultants or to the SDPI or like an other institute. They are working on the specific environment like Dr. Fahim. My supervisor is Dr. Fahim. So there are so much potential we have here for the research and development projects. So basically the point is that we have only the major donor agencies like the World Bank, like the United Nations. We have just win a project from the United Nations to make eco bricks from the plastic pollution. That will automatically reduce the carbonization. So that project is totally approved and we are going to start in the coming week. So there must be a project. There is a complete research and development to develop a project for our research purposes to reduce the different alternative of a decarbonization of cement. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Farooq Saab, please.
That was given by the previous governments. There was a lot of surplus potential that has been added to the Pakistan cement industry. और मैं अगर अपनी बात करूं तो we are at 50% of our production capacity. So जब ऐसी हालत हो तो I'm sorry, जब पेट खाली हो तो फिर हम फारसी में बात नहीं कर सकते. The issue is कि इन चीजों के लिए पैसा चाहिए. इस वक्त we are cash trapped. हमें डेली ऑपरेशंस चलाने में मसले हैं. हमारे पास बहुत सारे इंटरनल इश्यूज हैं. एक्सपोर्ट बंद है, ना अफगानिस्तान सीमेंट जा रहा है, ना इंडिया. नॉर्थ में जितने भी प्लांट्स हैं, वी वर ओनली एबल टू प्रोड्यूस एक्सपोर्ट थ्रू लैंड. तो और जो साउथ के प्लांट्स हैं, दे कैन एक्सपोर्ट थ्रू सी. तो हमारे पास तो एक ही ऑप्शन था जो बंद है काफी अरसे से, और इन द नियर फ्यूचर उसके खुलने की कोई हमें वायबिलिटी नजर नहीं आ रही. सो ये सारी बातें अच्छी हैं कि हम उसमें रिसर्च एंड डेवलपमेंट करें, हम खुद भी कर रहे हैं, लेकिन उसके अंदर जो कॉस्ट का एलिमेंट आता है, तो ये जो फाइनेंसिंग के चैनल्स हैं, उसमें सबसे बड़ा इशू ये है कि जब गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से कोई डेलीगेशन जाता है ना कॉप के इवेंट के ऊपर या किसी ऐसे इवेंट के ऊपर, तो सेक्रेटरी साहब चले जाते हैं, उनके जान पहचान वाले लोग चले जाते हैं और उनके कुछ चमचे चले जाते हैं. मसला ये है कि जो बाकी दुनिया है उनमें से इंडस्ट्री से लोग जाते हैं जो उस मसले को समझते हैं और जो अपने केस को ठीक तरीके से पिच कर सकें. तो जब तक आप लोग हमें ऑन बोर्ड नहीं करेंगे, जो इन मसलों को डे टू डे बेसिस के ऊपर फेस कर रहे हैं और जिन्होंने बहुत सारे इश्यूज के ऊपर अपनी पूरी स्टडी की हुई है, तो तब तक ये वाला मसला फाइनेंसिंग वाला हल नहीं होगा और हम इसी में फंसे रहेंगे कि हम 1 नंबर वाला करें या 6 नंबर वाला करें या 4 नंबर वाला करें. इन द लॉजिकल सीक्वेंस ऑफ इवेंट्स हमें 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 पे जाना चाहिए, लेकिन वी आर टूइंग एंड फ्रोइंग बिटवीन 1 and 6 and 3 and 4. सो दिस इज अ बिग चैलेंज व्हिच वी आर फेसिंग, और अगर इसको हम कर सकें कम ओवर, तो आई थिंक अ लॉट ऑफ दीज इश्यूज आर गोइंग टू टेक केयर ऑफ देमसेल्व्स. थैंक यू.
Thank you so much, everyone. So I would like to open the floor for discussion now, and I would also like to invite our experts. So Dr. Khalid Wali, who is a research fellow at SDPI, he's an energy economist, and he has more than 10 years of experience in Pakistan's energy sector, as well as Mr. Basit Ghauri, who is the manager research and networks at Renewable First, and he's dedicated to driving progress in electricity markets and energy. So I would invite you both to lead the discussion now. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Sabari? अच्छा, Dr. Sabari बैठे. Okay, so maybe I can start off a little bit and then I'll hand it over to Dr. Saab and we can open the questions a little bit. So first of all, thank you so much for the Pride NAST SDPI to tackle this complex question. जब हम emission scenarios की बात करते हैं तो उसमें जो मेजर इशू आता है वो हार्ड टू अबेट सेक्टर्स का आता है. बाकी सब में तो रिन्यूएबल्स हम बस कहते हैं लगाओ जैसे मर्जी. बट हाउ टू टैकल दिस हार्ड टू अबेट सेक्टर जहाँ पे आपके पास अदर देन पोर्शन ऑफ इट रिन्यूएबल्स या सोलर विंड लगाना इज नॉट अ सोल्यूशन एनीमोर. So having said that, I think जो हमारी आज की discussion points रही उसमें I won't go very deep into the technicalities of it because I think जिन्होंने study perform की है they would better understand about that. But there's just a couple of things that I wanted to mention about the strategies that were pitched beforehand. And I think if you want to evaluate, we need to have a comprehensive approach, but इतनी ज़्यादा recommendations में it would be better if we can kind of like shortlist our priority recommendations, perhaps 2 or 3 areas जहाँ पे हम मज़ीद काम कर सकते हैं. Having said that, plan में आपको हर चीज़ की include need होती है. So उन 3 priority areas के लिए I think हमें जो challenges हैं towards implementing those kind of solutions उनको mention करना ज़रूरी है. And there were a couple of these that were part of our discussion. So number one, there was discussion about the alternate fuels. आप RDF कर लें, आप TDF कर लें, या other जो है वो municipal solid waste के साथ कर लें. So it's definitely one of the solutions. But having said that, when we're talking about net zero, we need to be wary of the fact that the ultimate game जो कि हम करना चाह रहे हैं, that's zero emissions. These are not zero emissions technologies, right? So there is an emission scenarios associated with it. So it's a carbon reduction technology perhaps. So उस चीज को account for करना जरूरी है कि how much this solution and strategy would fall into the overarching target for reaching towards a net zero. Secondly, इसी के में ही फिर हमारे पास जिस तरह कुछ issues identify होते हैं कि आपको साथ सप्लाई चेन जरूरी है अगर आप आरडीएफ के लिए कर रहे हैं और वो वाली सारी चीजें. सो अ लॉट ऑफ सिनर्जीज आर देयर एंड आई थिंक उसमें हम थोड़ा सा अगर हम अपने एनडीसीज को गौर से पढ़ें व्हाट वी हैव कमिटेड ऑलरेडी is PPP partnerships with the private sector on cement to decarbonize cement. So I think अगर हम उसी को पढ़ लें so आपके पास PPP authorities भी available हैं. And if we already have the mandate and we have already committed, so perhaps these are ideal places to implement such kind of a solution where you can find synergies ke how you can bring together, let's say, a waste collector and kind of integrate or synergize them within industry and the demand center who can use it for the RDF. So one thing was that. Second, there was a discussion about the CCS with Fahim Saab as well. So I'll take some point on and I'll kind of bifurcate into a bit about the new innovative CCS technologies. But when we talk about carbon capture and storage technologies that are deployed worldwide, that mostly includes the amino-based, I think, solutions which capture the carbon dioxide from the exhaust systems, which are the most commercially, I wouldn't say commercially available, but which have been deployed at a commercial scale up till now. So when we're talking about those technologies, despite ये कि आपके पास global, there's a lot of push and there's always a place of CCS in the net zero scenario, there are certain things that are just too much of a big constraint for the CCS that we need to take into account. Number one, उनके पास जो आपके पास space required है. So if you are putting up a, let's say, 1,000 megawatt plant, so you need about the same kind of a space to put up a, let's say, CCS plant to control its emissions. And that is one of the reasons why I don't remember the name of the project in the US that didn't go through. Then there's an issue of where will you take that CO2 demand, right? So you are talking about big plants and big capturing. The underground storage is definitely viable, but when you're talking about over the top and putting it into industries, you have an example of Shanghai where you had a plant and it was operating about, I think it was capturing about 5% emission of a coal power plant, and then they couldn't find for a Shanghai, which is like a big, city center, have a lot of CO2 demand. They couldn't find where to put that CO2 away. So they had to close that plant as well. So these are the kind of challenges. And then the biggest of all the projects up till now for the CCS at the large scale that have been deployed, they have been backed by some kind of a subsidy. It's not a commercially viable solution. Having said that, as Fahim Saab was mentioning, if there are local solutions available, you can do it small prototypes and things like that. Those are the things that we need to focus on. Maybe we need to start exploring those and scaling up those and see how they can become commercially viable and commercially bankable. Last thing that I wanted to mention was about the carbon pricing that was pitched a lot, and we talk about CBAM a little bit. Again, we have to understand CBAM is a European initiative initially, that led to many of the other developed countries to follow the suit. to build their carbon markets around it so that they are able to export at a competitive rate within that country, within the EU. And also now वो Inflation Reduction Act के बाद US में भी आपके पास यही चीज चल रही है. जब हम सीमेंट की बात करें, आई वाज लुकिंग थ्रू दिस, जो मैंने इनिशियली पॉइंट भी फहीम साहब से उठाया था कि उसकी जो मेजर डिमांड है वो आपके पास गल्फ कंट्रीज हैं और आपके पास जो है ये एशियन कंट्रीज हैं, बेस्ड ऑन द रिपोर्ट. सो दोज आर द कंट्रीज दैट यू डोंट फोरसी कि वो कार्बन प्राइसिंग लाएंगी, और अगर वो कार्बन प्राइसिंग लाएंगी भी तो दे आर एक्सपेक्टेड कि वो आपके पास एक्सपोर्ट के लिए लेकर आएंगी, नॉट इंटरनल यूजेज के लिए. So they may be happy to import carbon intensive products like Pakistan जिसके high strategy में नहीं है, but they will probably be focused on just focusing the interventions कि वो आपके पास जो है export कर सकें तो उन पे carbon tax लगा दें. So those are the kind of instruments that exist. So I think CBAM and all that, the way to look around it is कि हम लोग जो नई market है, because if you look into the market of the cement में ही आपके पास जो एशिया में जा रही है और जो EU में जा रही है, there's a lot of difference in the cost competitive and pricing of it, and specifically जब आप green premium pay कर रहे होते हैं cost का. So I think the way to look around is not to look into it कि यार आपको ये obstacle आएगा, और क्योंकि टेक्सटाइल के लिए आएगा, टेक्सटाइल को पता है, दैट्स व्हाई दे आर शूटिंग इट. सीमेंट को आई थिंक द नैरेटिव इज नॉट मोर लाइक इट, ये आपके पास एक ऑब्स्टिकल आएगा तो यू नीड टू स्विच, मे नॉट वर्क, आई डोंट नो, बट प्रोबेबली द cement के लिए it's mostly about the green premium that you can cash in if you know look into Europe as a green market for the green exports. So ये तीन areas है which I feel like where I wanted to give some input, and plus as a wider question answer session जो इसके बाद अभी होना है, there are just certain points which I felt like which we can have more discussion around, जहाँ पे हमारे इतनी ज़्यादा बातें नहीं हुई. Number one was financing difficulties, जिस तरह अभी आपने mention किया था at the end जाके. What is it that the government can do? In simple words, other than the subsidies. I know everyone loves subsidies, but we need to get out of it. That's not sustainable product. Other than that, कैसे आपको financing में आपके पास कौन से ऐसे partners ला सकते हैं? Climate finance कैसे आपको access करने में help कर सकते हैं? There are scores of instruments that are out there. What are those instruments? So maybe a discussion around that could be helpful. Then also I think जो हमारे पास थी इन सारी स्ट्रैटेजीज में एनर्जी एफिशिएंसी की जो आपने अपनी इसमें लिखी भी अबाउट आई थिंक 25% तो मैं पढ़ रहा था. आपका जो लॉन्ग ड्राई किल्न जो है उसको अगर आप प्री हीट प्री कैल्सिनर किल्न में कन्वर्ट करें तो 25% एमिशन रिडक्शंस कर सकें. सो दैट्स अ सब्सटैंशियल अमाउंट ऑफ रिडक्शंस एज वेल. सो आई वाज जस्ट वंडरिंग हमारी इस डिस्कशन में अगर प्राइवेट सेक्टर से दे कैन टॉक अबाउट इंट्रोडक्शन ऑफ दीज टेक्नोलॉजीज, ऑफ द एनर्जी एफिशिएंट टेक्नोलॉजीज विच मे बी अ लो हैंगिंग फ्रूट, जहाँ पे आपके पास RDF के लिए कोई सप्लाई चेन नहीं क्रिएट करनी या इस तरह की चीजें, उधर क्या एग्जैक्टली चैलेंजेस और इश्यूज हैं, उनको कैसे इंप्लीमेंट कर सकते हैं. लिटिल बिट डिस्कशन अराउंड दैट वुड बी हेल्पफुल. विद दैट आई एंड माय कमेंट्स एंड हैंड इट ओवर टू
you.
थैंक यू.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. A lot has been covered by Basit's very insightful and very comprehensive sort of discussion around these studies. First of all, congratulations the authors and researchers on conducting such a very, I would say, targeted sort of sector-specific study, which Pakistan direly need, particularly when we link economy, energy, and its environment. I always say starts with that there is a multifaceted crisis that is faced by Pakistan, maybe all over the world, but particularly Pakistan. We have an economic turmoil, trade deficit, fiscal deficit, known as twin deficit, a rare phenomena, but still for Pakistan, it is a very common thing right now. That dwells into Pakistan's unsustainable energy mix, because we cannot simply afford that kind of luxury to invest into our renewable energy sector and then build a transmission sector, transmission system for that as well. And again, climate change, climate injustice causes Pakistan billions of dollars of loss, which again reflects into economic crisis, and the vicious cycle continues. So this is a very, I would say, again, targeted sort of effort to bring Pakistan out of this vicious cycle of economy, energy, and environment. Talking specific to these two studies, I would say there are two sides of it. First is normative side, Second is the positive side, the normative side, where we always discuss what should be done. I mean, what should be the benchmarks and what should be the ideal sort of scenario where we need to discuss climate injustice, when we need to tackle it, we need to incorporate more and more innovative sort of ways. We need to introduce economic engine, we need to bring subsidies, we need to promote green practices. These are some of the normative side. These are very necessary, pivotal, because they kept us in a loop. They give us the targets so that we can sort of converge towards those targets. But for countries like Pakistan, developing countries, the positive side is very important. So we need to sort of focus on that as well. And positive side is what is happening around here in Pakistan. Again, multifaceted crisis. So we need these tangible sort of solutions that has been presented in these two studies, starting from Dr. Fahim's and Pride's study, that maybe one tangible solution is this applicability and implementation of these carbon capture, storage and utilization sort of initiative that Dr. Fahim also mentioned. Maybe prototype with academia, industry, and then we sort of bleed into the policy realm. Second would be Basit already mentioned, Inflation Reduction Act sort of things in Pakistan, where government through legislation targeting inflation or reducing inflation through these practices, giving tax credits, not just the subsidies, Basit, subsidies plus tax credits. That may be another financial instrument where we can sort of attract industry for these sustainable practices. Another thing that came into my mind through Pride and Dr. Fahim's study, there was a graph, I'm forgetting the page, where they show the relationship between PSDP and cement consumption in Pakistan. And there is a strong correlation between PSDP funding and cement production, which tells us that government can also sort of achieve IMF's Public Investment Management Assessment Framework. There is a framework for IMF's PIMA framework known as. It has been changed to CPIMA, that is Climate Public Investment Management Assessment, which means all the public investments that is being done through PSDP in Pakistan would be subjected to climate sort of initiatives. So maybe that can be very helpful, and these recommendations can be very helpful in greening Pakistan's PSDP as well, because most of them is based on brick and mortar in Pakistan. So that would be a very thoughtful thing to do as well. Another thing is that both studies talk about scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions. There is emerging thing that is scope 4 emissions, and scope 4 emissions are avoided emissions that sort of delve into all the points in the supply chain. We can study in detail about that scope 4 emissions as well, and that could be the basis for carbon credits and carbon pricing sort of framework as well. So that could be incorporated as well. In terms of alternative energy, municipal solid waste solutions, maybe the first problem with that is the sorting, I guess. Maybe if sorting can be done at the source, that could solve many problems. For that, maybe a local government system combined with effective municipal committees, that could help. In terms of alternative energies, I was reading a few days back that CIMEX and in China and Saltex, these three have started to electrify their cement production processes through RDH technology. CIMEX is sort of presenting their prototype in 2024. Maybe they have launched it. Saltex is also using some sort of a electric plasma system, I guess, for clinker sort of thing. So these can be done. Lastly, maybe we can explore more on the role of Cement Association in Pakistan for funding their for pooling of funding, for state-of-the-art technologies where academia, policy, and industry can sort of integrate and develop some sort of a alliance based on Green Economy Council in UK and P2X alliance sort of situation in Denmark. That could be helpful for Pakistan as well. So I always say that before implementation, there are some steps we need to take. First is introspection. We need to introspect what are some sort of raw materials available for Pakistan, what is the level of technology in Pakistan that we have at our hand at the cement industry, and what is the level of, I would say, labor force and Pakistan's capacity. Second step is integration, which is very important, not just the academia, industry, and policy integration, but public and private integration as well. Third is inclusiveness. Fourth is incentivization, which is obviously the economic engine behind all these sustainable practices. And then comes implementation, and implementation will only comes through ownership, and ownership from the political parties. Maybe SDPI has working on the Green Manifesto sort of initiative, where we sort of striving to bring more and more green practices into manifestos and into political discourse. So that could be very helpful for Pakistan. Again, congratulations, the researchers and authors of these studies. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to an effective and insightful discussion ahead. Thank you so much. It's okay. If you have questions regarding these studies or these broader sort of economy, energy, environment, or in the ambit of CBAM, you are most welcome.
I would take this opportunity to thank you, both of the panelists, for giving us review for some missing points or some missing aspects, probably. The first thing, and even also the mention by some financial constraint by the industry by Mr. Farooq. So that financial constraint is also existing in the government sector, government avenues as well. So they don't have any fiscal leverage as well. So that means GDP is hanging around 2% of progress, which is not very healthy one. So that means there's constraint of available resources. So, but the main important thing is, which is actually not probably discussed properly. So we are unable at the national level and also as individual or organizational level, we could not tap the Green Climate Fund, which is widely available. And even within our region, South Asian region, we hardly had any successful examples or case that we could tap this Green Climate Fund. And even if you look around our neighbors, the India is actually having maximum of the project from GCF. Okay, and they have widely implemented for this decarbonization. They have widely implemented in the renewable energy transitions and all other steps. Their emissions are far higher than the Pakistan one. Okay, so I guess this need to be prioritized. We need to build our capacity at the government level and even at the organization level to tap this opportunity. It's a sort of low-hanging fruit which can be tapped. So, and rightly mentioned by Dr. Khalid as well. So this could be only done. I mean, not industry has all the capacities, not government organizations or regulators have all the capacities, not academia has that. So this nexus should be there. So it is a very win-win situation for all the stakeholders. This nexus should be promoted at all levels. For instance, if any policy, I mean, policies, I personally believe that the policies are meant for the social reform, social well-being of the society and the environment as well. So how well these policies have been implemented or not, this requires a feedback. This feedback is missing from towards the government and towards the executors as well. So this can be done through the research and development institutes and academia that can provide you the feedback, whether where is the loopholes, whether this has been successful, adequate or inadequate one. And then there should be policy reforms. So this nexus can help in many ways to bridge the gap, to tap the funds, to develop the capacity and all these things. Second thing that you rightly point out, that the existing CCS technology, which was the amine-based separation, is purely for the CO2 stream, which is used for carbonated drinks and all these things. But I mean, it has limited scope because there is no that much demand. I totally agree. So that again supports my point that we shouldn't go for this is like a capture. We should prioritize this utilization. As I gave you example before, I mentioned so many times that what we capture, we utilize, we produce another one. We turn CO2 in another produce, which is used as a feedstock for another industrial application. So that means we are completely removing this. So although there could be a scalability issue for the time being, but who knows, there could be a huge scope available. But the thing is, the incentive should be there from either side, the government side and the industry side. Okay, so yeah, then there are some other constraint may already discussed.
Dr. Fahim, we'll just very quickly circle back if just some of the partners wants to add something. So I think firstly, I'll be coming to Farooq Saab, and after that, I would also like to hear from, we have colleagues from the National Productivity Organization, NPO as well. We have colleagues from NICA as well. And we have some all other private sector, if they want to add anything. And we also have some researchers from International Islamic University who are doing some work around the decarbonization of cement sector as well. So they can also add, but first starting from the Farooq Saab, please.
So thank you for pointing this out. Fruits and why we are not investing in them. If I talk about CDM, now it's obsolete. So I've worked on 2 projects in Pakistan where we applied for CDM and we got carbon credits. But eventually the money that we were getting from those projects was not even enough to meet the requirements. ठीक है, वो जो थर्ड पार्टी ऑडिटर आता था उस पूरे प्रोसेस में हमें ज्यादा पैसे लगते थे। क्योंकि गवर्नमेंट ने एलडीसीज तो बना दिए, ठीक है। अब उन्होंने कभी इंडस्ट्री को बुला के ये नहीं बताया कि जी हमने ये वी आर कमिटिंग दिस, इसके अंदर आप लोग क्या कंट्रीब्यूट कर सकते हैं और कौन से एवेन्यूज अवेलेबल हैं। वी टोटली एग्री, द गवर्नमेंट डज नॉट हैव एनी मनी टू गिव अस टैक्स ब्रेक्स और सब्सिडीज, मत दें हमें, लेकिन एटलीस्ट हमें फैसिलिटेट करें। If you are not taking us somewhere, at least bring those financing people to us. हम वर्ल्ड बैंक को बुलाएं, IFC को बुलाएं, ADB को बुलाएं, उन सब की पाकिस्तान के अंदर प्रेजेंस है, किसी को मनीला से या वॉशिंगटन से आने की जरूरत नहीं है। All of them have their offices in Pakistan. तो हमें उनके साथ बिठाएं और पहले हमें ये बताएं कि इन NDCs को आप अपने टारगेट्स के साथ कैसे लिंक कर सकते हैं। मेरे पास इस वक्त इंस्टॉल्ड कैपेसिटी 110 मेगावाट सोलर की है और 71 मेगावाट वेस्ट हीट रिकवरी पावर प्रोजेक्ट्स की है। और दिन के अंदर अगर हमारा प्लांट चले सही और धूप अवेलेबल हो तो 55% हमारे पास रिप्लेसमेंट है ग्रिड एनर्जी से, ठीक है। तो ये सारी चीजें सीमेंट वाले ऑलरेडी कर रहे हैं। अभी हमें नहीं समझ आ रही थी कि हम अपने कार्बन क्रेडिट्स कहाँ बेचें, और सम ऑफ आवर प्रोजेक्ट्स जो कि हमने शायद 3-4 साल पहले स्टार्ट किए थे, अब वो टाइम बाद हो गए, वो किसी भी कंप्लायंस या वॉलंटरी मार्केट में नहीं जा सकते। किसका नुकसान है? पाकिस्तान का भी नुकसान है, इंडस्ट्री का भी नुकसान है। So what we want from the Ministry of Climate Change, what we want from the government is कि ये सारी चीजें आप लोगों ने कमिटमेंट्स तो कर दी। अब जो 2030 की कमिटमेंट्स हैं, we are setting in 2024, उनमें से बहुत सारी चीजों के ऊपर कोई भी काम नहीं हो सका और ना किसी फॉरेन इंटरवेंशन के बगैर या क्लाइमेट फंडिंग के बगैर हम वो कर सकेंगे। अगर हम इलेक्ट्रिक कार्स की तरफ या इलेक्ट्रिफिकेशन ऑफ एनी ऑफ द प्रोसेसेस हम उसकी तरफ जाएं, हमारा एनर्जी मिक्स क्या है? अगर आप एनर्जी एमिशन आप एक जगह से खत्म करते हैं तो दूसरी जगह से निकालेंगे। सो दैट्स नॉट द सोल्यूशन। सो व्हाट वी वांट इज कि या तो हमें सस्ती फाइनेंसिंग मिले, हमें लोगों के पास लेके जाएं जिनके पास पैसे हैं, और तीसरा कोऑर्डिनेशन नीड्स टू बी इम्प्रूव्ड। इस वक्त आप लोग अब अलग स्फेयर में काम कर रहे हैं, हम लोग अलग स्फेयर में काम कर रहे हैं, व्हाइल वी शुड ऑल बी वर्किंग टुगेदर। मे बी SDPI वालों ने जितना हमें फॉलो किया है, या द जेंटलमैन सिटिंग एट द बैक फॉर द डेवलपमेंट ऑफ पंजाब एनवायरनमेंट की क्वालिटी स्टैंडर्ड्स, push किया है तो हम यहाँ बैठे डेटा शेयर किया है and we are talking about कि जो issues हमें face हो रहे हैं. So this is the kind of support, this is the kind of coordination that we need from the ministry and from the government functionaries. That's the only way forward. और अगर वो हम करेंगे तो I think there is a lot of potential for decarbonization. Thank you.
Yes, if Dr. Sairam wants to respond, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ubaid and Salia and Dr. Khalid. First of all, I would like to highlight about the green financing. I agree with Dr. Fain about Green Climate Fund that is already established. And we have a dedicated climate finance wing now. इसमें already दो projects हमारे ग्रीन क्लाइमेट फंड्स में ऑनगोइंग हैं, एक एग्रीकल्चर स्मार्ट के हवाले से और दूसरा ग्लॉफ, ये ऑनगोइंग हैं. और थर्ड अभी एक अप्रूव हुआ है रिचार्ज पाकिस्तान के नाम से, दैट इज अबाउट 63 मिलियन US$. तो इसमें स्टिल स्कोप है, जिस तरह डॉक्टर फहीम ने भी कहा है कि हमें इसमें टैप अप करना है. और हमने उसमें प्रोसेस है दैट इज अबाउट, आप कह सकते हैं 2 years इट विल टेक टाइम. लेकिन उसमें उनकी जो रिक्वायरमेंट्स है, उनकी जो डेलीगेशन है, और ये बेस्ड करता है इन सियोल, उनका जो हेड ऑफिस है GCF का, लेकिन उनके डेलीगेट्स आते रहते हैं. एक तो ये है कि हम उसमें अपनी जो भी हमारी NDCs या जो डीकार्बोनाइजेशन है उसके साथ हम लिंक कर सकते हैं. आपकी जो एसोसिएशन है उनको बुला के जॉइंट प्रोजेक्ट भी हम कर सकते हैं. इंडिविजुअल लेवल पे आप इंडस्ट्री भी वहाँ पे कर सकती है. दूसरा जो है हमारे पास ग्लोबल इन्वायरमेंट फैसिलिटी जेफ के नाम से है, तो उसमें भी ऑलरेडी हमने कोई 170 मिलियन US$ के प्रोजेक्ट एग्जीक्यूट किए हैं. मैक्सिमम 5 मिलियन US$ फॉर 5 years वो देते हैं, तो उसमें भी फंडिंग अवेलेबल है. और प्लस ये है कि अभी रिसेंटली लास्ट गवर्नमेंट में कार्बन मार्केट्स के ऊपर भी एक स्ट्रेटजी पे ऊपर काम हो रहा है और उसके अभी अंडर डिस्कशंस है. तो उसमें भी पोटेंशियल है कि कैसे हम जो लोकल कार्बन है इसको कैसे मार्केट किया जाए. और जिस तरह फरूख साहब ने कहा है कि काफ़ी वेस्ट हो रहा है, और जो बाकी कंट्रीज़ हैं, चाइना, इंडिया, ऑलरेडी जब CDM था उन्होंने $millions अर्न भी किए हैं. और हमारी कुछ इंडस्ट्री, फातिमा फर्टिलाइज़र वन ऑफ देम, जिसने वहाँ से कुछ फैसिलिटीज़ जो है ना अवेल की हैं. तो ये कुछ एरियाज़ हैं जिस पे हम आप लोग जो इंडस्ट्री है वो इनकरेज करेंगे कि आप लोग आए मिनिस्ट्री में, इसके जो फोकल पॉइंट्स हैं उनके साथ आप मिलें, मीटिंग्स भी करें, और ये कंटिन्यूसली आप जो है ना टच करें. क्योंकि वो आपकी बात मैं फुली एग्री करता हूँ कि गैप्स में जो है ना ये पॉलिसीज़ या NDCs बना रहे हैं, और जिसमें इंडस्ट्रीज़ को जब ये डिस्कशंस हो रही होती हैं, जब टारगेट फिक्स कर रहे होते हैं, ये राउंड टेबल मीटिंग मिनिस्ट्री में बैठ के डिसाइड कर लेते हैं इतने % हम अचीव कर लेंगे, लेकिन इंडस्ट्री को पता ही नहीं है कि इन्होंने टारगेट भी फिक्स कर दिए और भिजवा भी दिए हैं, और वहाँ पे UNF ट्रिपल साइट की वेबसाइट भी चढ़े हुए हैं. तो ये एक अनफॉर्चुनेट है जिसके ऊपर जो है ना एक जिसे कहते हैं ना देखना चाहिए. और दूसरा आई एग्री कि ये जो कॉप्स की मीटिंग्स होती हैं ये एक इंटरनेशनल फोरम है जिसके ऊपर पूरी दुनिया से एक्सपर्ट्स आते हैं, NGOs के लोग आते हैं, और वहाँ पे एक्सचेंज ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन होती हैं, टेक्नोलॉजीज के हवाले से डिस्कशंस होती हैं. तो यहाँ पे दैट इज़ वेरी लैक. आई फुली एग्री विद फरोख. यहाँ पे जो ब्यूरोक्रेट्स हैं जिनको CO2 में C का भी नहीं पता कि क्या होता है, जिसने BA फारसी पढ़ी होती है, अनफॉर्चुनेटली वो CSS करके तो बस सेक्रेटरी बन गए, लेकिन दे आर नॉट टेक्निकल पीपल. और दूसरा ये है कि एडहॉकिज्म है, 6 महीने साल से ज़्यादा इनकी लाइफ नहीं है. डॉक्टर शायद बैठे हुए कंसल्टेंट पंजाब में कर रहे हैं, मेरा ख्याल है 1 महीने में 3 दफ़ा भी सेक्रेटरी और इनके DG चेंज होते हैं. मतलब उनकी स्टेबिलिटी और जो सस्टेनेबिलिटी है वो ज़ीरो है. और जब तक आपकी जो पॉलिसी मेकर्स हैं वो एक्सपर्ट्स नहीं होंगे, इवन इंडस्ट्री का उन्होंने कभी मुंह भी नहीं देखा होगा, जो यहाँ पे डिसीजन कर रहे हैं, चाहे वो सीमेंट इंडस्ट्री है, फर्टिलाइजर इंडस्ट्री है, ट्रांसपोर्ट का उनको पता ही नहीं है Euro 2 क्या है, Euro 4 क्या है. तो ये एक बड़ा एक अलमिया है कि हम इस वक्त जो हमारी टेक्निकल मिनिस्ट्री है, लेकिन 90% वहाँ ब्यूरोक्रेसी है, ठीक है, जिनकी कोई ना बेस लाइन है, ना उनकी कोई जिसे कहते हैं डेप्थ नॉलेज है, और वही डिसीजन मेकर में है, और वही लोग जाके कॉप में रिप्रेजेंट करते हैं, और दैट इज़ वेरी शेमफुल. ٹیکنیکل لوگ جائیں, اپنی ایکسپرٹیز شیئر کریں اور ٹیکنالوجی لے کے آئیں, فنڈز لے کے آئیں, تو یہ ایک پریکٹس ہونی چاہیے. تو یہ ایک جسے کہتے ہیں نا, ہمیں اس کے اوپر تھوڑا وے فارورڈ, بلکہ انڈسٹریز کو بھی چاہیے کہ وہ تھوڑا ان کو پش اپ کریں کہ یہ جو آپ لوگوں کی پریکٹس ہے, ایون ناٹ اونلی دی انڈسٹریز, انرجی سیکٹر ہے وہ بھی وہاں پہ کاپ میں ریپرزینٹ نہیں کرتا, ٹرانسپورٹیشن سیکٹر ہے وہ بھی وہاں پہ ریپرزینٹ نہیں کرتا, ایگریکلچر سیکٹر ہے وہ پہ, مطلب جتنے آپ نے این ڈی سیز میں دیے ہوئے ہیں, چاہے وہ میٹیگیشن ہے یا اڈاپٹیشن ہے, اس میں جو مین سٹیک ہولڈرز ہیں ان کی ریپرزینٹیشن ہی نہیں ہے وہاں پہ. تو اس لیے یہ جو ہے نا, ہم کیوں برازیل جیسا ملک ہے 1000 میں ان کے پارٹیسپینٹس ہوتے ہیں, انڈیا کے 1000 میں ہوتے ہیں, چائنا کے 1000 میں ہوتے ہیں, اور وہاں پہ ابھی جو کاپ 28 میں تقریباً اباؤٹ 80,000 پیپل تھے پوری دنیا سے. وہ ایک سمجھے پورا ایک ولیج ہوتا ہے, گلوبل ولیج آپ کہہ سکتے ہیں. تو ہر طرح کے لوگ ہوتے ہیں, اکیڈیمیا کے بھی ہوتے ہیں, میڈیا کے بھی ہوتے ہیں, جوڈیشری سے بھی ہوتے ہیں, اور دیئر از اے وے, وہاں پہ آپ ایکسچینج کرتے ہیں کہ آپ لوگ کیا کر رہے ہیں, وہاں سے آپ کو سیکھتے ہیں, پھر وہ ایک فورم آپ کو مل جاتا ہے, اس میں انڈرسٹینڈنگ بھی ہوتی ہے, ڈیولپ کنٹریز کیا کر رہے ہیں, آپ کیا کر رہے ہیں. تو یہ ہمیں جو ہے نا اس کی انگیجمنٹس گورنمنٹ کے ساتھ انڈسٹری کی یہ بہت ضروری ہے. اور جب تک آپ انڈسٹری یا جتنے سیکٹر میں نے بتائے ہیں اس کو آپ آن بورڈ نہیں کریں گے تو یہ پالیسی یوز لیس ہیں. یہ دیٹ از جسٹ بک آپ نے شیلف میں رکھ دی ہے, اینڈیز بنا دیے ہیں, خود بخود تو 2030 تک ٹارگیٹ نہیں ہوں گے جب تک پریکٹیکل انٹرونشن نہیں کریں گے. آپ نے انڈسٹری میں ٹارگیٹ فٹ کیے ہوئے ہیں, ٹرانسپورٹیشن کی آپ نے جو CO2 ہے, میتھین ہے, باقی جو آپ کی گرین ہاؤس گیسز ہیں, کیسے آپ ریڈیوس کریں گے. ٹیبل ٹاک پہ تو ریڈکشن نہیں ہونی جب تک پریکٹیکل انٹرونشن نہیں کریں گے. اس وقت تک یہ نہ ہم ٹارگیٹ اچیو کر سکتے ہیں اور نہ ہم یہ جو گلوبل وارمنگ ہے اس میں کوئی اپنا کنٹریبیوشن کر سکتے ہیں. تھینک یو.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saigam. And fully agree that the coordination is the key. So, coming to you, sir, you briefly raise your hand, please.
Assalamu alaikum ji. Didn't get to formally introduce myself in the morning. Hamid Afridi naam hai. I'm leading the Green Growth and Climate Change portfolio in Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund. I really appreciate again STPI and Paidar and also NUST for this platform. And I really appreciate the sentiments that I hear from the industry as well as specialists like yourselves, Dr. Fahim, Dr. Zaham, yourself, Ubaid. Really impressive presentations, and a lot of work has gone into it. So first of all, I'd like to request everybody for an applause for everybody who is associated with it. Quickly, couple of things I want to say. I was at COP28 myself as a non-state representative. Pehle din jab inaugural hua, so afternoon mein first session tha. I just want to quickly share this experience with all of you because you all feel like that. And Dr. Saab ne echo kiya wo cheez dobara se, aapne echo kiya, Farooq Saab. Sham mein session tha state actors ka for discussions on the loss and damage fund. Aap sab ke ilm mein 2022 floods mein we were as PPF one of the first responders. We still are in the field, चाहे वो सुतलेज में इस साल और पिछले साल जो 2 दफा फ्लड्स आए हैं या अभी जो 53 के करीब इस रेंज में 12 से 16 तक जो हुई है हमारे मुल्क में 53 के करीब हम बात हुई है प्रेशियस लाइफ्स, our hearts and prayers for all of them. 1400 से ज़्यादा houses fully damaged across वो, and another spell we are anticipating in starting maybe today. जिसमें already warning है, आप अखबार में देखा होगा आज के it's going to be a heavy one. Hope for the best is something similar to what happened in UAE, but hope not. Keeping fingers crossed. जब वो state actors की meeting थी, Dr. Saab, on adaptation fund या loss and damage fund, whatever they wish to call it now, World Bank उसको manage करेगा. US representatives carry थे वहाँ पे, so he put his foot down कि World Bank manage करेगा. So हमारी कितनी say होगी उसमें as a Pakistan, as a country, one of the most vulnerable, fifth now, according to latest research on the most vulnerability list risk index globally. 3 seats थी, पाकिस्तान का झंडा लगा हुआ था, there was not even a single person representing there. तमाम ममालिक थे. I had to go request. I requested as a special request I put out to the observers there and other organizers ke let me in to that room क्योंकि जो non-observers, non-state actors थे, they were given another conference room to sit there and watch live discussions like we are having right now. I had to request China and couple of other friendly countries like Saudi and Indonesia कि जी जो डिस्कशन हुई उसकी जिस्ट अगर आप शेयर कर सकें काइंडली हमारे डेलीगेशन क्योंकि हमारे सेक्रेटरी साहबान और ब्यूरोक्रेट्स जो हैं दे आर मोर बिजी इन वेयर टू प्लेस द multimedia and where to put so they can speak portrait and picture and they were more interested in that. So that was COP. What I want to say is let's not lose hope and let's work together. COP 29 आ रही है बाकू में November 11th को planned है November 11th से 22nd. So I'd like to request SDPI and yourselves, those of you in the industry also who are interested, I'm told by the UN कि जून में उसकी registration शुरू हो जाएगी. Please register yourselves. You can do it directly. You don't need anybody's, stamp for you कि जी आप attend करें. You can go and do it. And what I'd like you to request you additionally is कि prepare होके जाएं. Showcase what you have done, as was mentioned कि जो आपने renewable energy को use कर रहे हैं उसको जाके represent करें वहाँ discuss करें चीजें and discuss and engage with those. This is one thing I want to say. Secondly, उबैद की presentation में एक last point था that I like to echo again, way forward पे. And way forward say before we get up from our seats today, my request is to SDPI, to Pedar, and also to NUS team and experts like yourselves. Okay, let's form a group with the industry, which is here today, of volunteers who come together from time to time for carrying on discussions. जो भाई ने बात की earlier के जो priorities बहुत सी हैं or recommendations बहुत सी हैं. So what are the things that we start working on? And as far as our organization is concerned, we'd like to propose to the industry to make it a win-win situation as you proposed and work with you on offsetting some of the carbon emissions. जब तक हम वो technology नहीं लेकर आ सकते, जब तक हम afford नहीं कर सकते बाकी चीजें, जैसे डॉक्टर साहब ने कहा, we want to work with you if you are willing, together with SDPI and experts. They'll be guiding us to how to start offsetting, so at least we can say that ये जो अमवात हुई 53 इसमें हमारा हाथ नहीं है. हमने कम से कम अपना conscience हमारा clear and we are trying to produce, as brother said, and export for Pakistan and get people work and earn livelihoods through this industry. लेकिन we are also we have our hands are clean. So this is my request and submission to Ubaid and other colleagues here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, sir. It sounds pretty interesting, and definitely we'll be taking this forward as per the approach that you mentioned. So before we go any further, just last couple of comments. We have two public sector organizations. If National Productivity Organization, NPO, or NICA wants to add something, if we can actually have a mic back there, and then I'll be coming to you. I'll be handing it back to you, Amara. Yes, we have a thumbs up from the National Productivity Organization. So yeah, thumbs up, over to you.
Thank you, Ubaid, SDPI और टीम और जितने मेरे कोलीग्स आए हुए, बड़ी अच्छी डिस्कशन और वे फॉरवर्ड के लिए डिस्कशन हो रही है. फारूक ने बात की है तो तकरीबन लास्ट 15 ईयर से एनर्जी के ऊपर हम काम कर रहे हैं एनपीओ. एट द एंड जो कंक्लूजन ये, जब तक हम प्राइवेट सेक्टर को स्ट्रेंथन नहीं करेंगे तब तक दुनिया में भी, मतलब ये सिर्फ मेरी ऑब्जर्वेशन नहीं है, दुनिया में भी हम compete नहीं कर सकते. 2-3 एग्जांपल है. मैं एडिट कर रहा था स्टील मिल्स में, तो वहाँ मुझे ओनर्स कह रहे थे कि ये आफ्ताब ये टेक्नोलॉजी बता दे कि ये कहाँ से करना है, हमने खुद लगा देना है. तो वहाँ से मुझे समझ आई कि बड़ी अच्छी पोटेंशियल्स है और प्राइवेट सेक्टर खुद इस पर काम कर सकती है. हमारे टेक्सटाइल सेक्टर देखे تو جو دوسری انڈسٹری اس طرح وہ بھی ہے. 70s میں اگر آپ دیکھ لیں تو وہ بھی دھوتی پا کر جو ہے نا لوگ کپڑے بناتے تھے. بعد میں ابھی دیکھے دنیا کے ساتھ ہم کمپیٹ کر رہے ہیں ہر چیز میں. جو بھی فیبرک ہے تو وہ ہمارے انجینئرز بنا سکتے ہیں. اس میں ایک ایلیمنٹ یہ ہے کہ ہماری نیشنل ٹیکسٹائل یونیورسٹی ہے, وہاں کی جو اکیڈیمیا انڈسٹری لنکیج, یہ 2007 میں نے جوائن کیا مطلب پبلک سیکٹر کو, وہاں سے اس کے اوپر ہم کام کر رہے ہیں. لیکن ابھی تک ڈیولپ نہیں ہو سکتا, لیکن وہ بائی نیچرلی وہ ڈیولپ ہوا ہے کہ انجینئرز نے انڈسٹری میں سروائیول کرنا تھا. تو وہاں جو ہے نا لوگ جو جونیئرز ہے سینئر کے پاس جاتے ہیں, ان کے ساتھ بیٹھتے ہیں, وہ ایک انڈائریکٹ انٹرنشپ ہوتی ہے. تو وہاں وہ انجینئر ایٹ لیسٹ جب نکلتے ہیں تو اس کو انڈسٹری کا پتہ ہوتا ہے. تو وہ پھر جو ڈیلیگیشن کی بات فرق نے کی, اب جو بھی ٹیکسٹائل ایگزیبیشن دنیا میں ہوتی ہے, جو میرے کنٹیکٹ میں ہے ٹیکسٹائل, مطلب ایک مل سے 5 6 7 بندے جا رہے ہوتے ہیں. تو یہ 1000 بندے تقریباً اگر آپ ڈیٹا کلیکٹ کریں, وہ ٹیکسٹائل کے ایک ایگزیبیشن میں پاکستان سے جا رہے ہوتے ہیں, وہاں سے لیٹسٹ ٹیکنالوجی لے کر آتے. اس میں ایک پوائنٹ ہے کہ ہم وہاں سے ٹیکنالوجی لے کر آتے جو ہمیں لوکلائزیشن کرنی چاہیے. اس کے ٹیکنالوجی ٹرانسفر جیویز ایک سسٹمیٹک طریقے سے ہمیں کرنا چاہیے. تو پرائیویٹ سیکٹر کو اسٹرینتھن, ان کو بتانا کہ یہ چیزیں اس طرح ہو سکتی ہے. دوسری جو مطلب فائنینشیل پرابلمز ہے وہ آپ لوگوں کے سامنے ہے, اور اس کے بغیر ہم بہت زیادہ اگر پالیسی بھی بناتے ہیں, بہت زیادہ ایکٹیویٹی بھی کرتے ہیں, جب امپلیمنٹیشن نہیں ہوگی تو ہم نہیں کر سکتے, اور وہ ایک مین پلر ہے. تو اس کے لیے ایک جیویز ہے, جیویز کے اوپر کام کیا جا سکتا ہے, جو موسٹلی گورنمنٹ اس کو ڈرائیو کرتی ہے. تو اس میں پرائیویٹ سیکٹر کی ایس ڈی پی آئی اس کے اوپر ایک فریم ورک ڈیولپ کر سکتی کہ پرائیویٹ سیکٹر اسی کو کس طرح ڈرائیو کر رہے. تو وہ ایک جو ہماری جیویز کی پوٹینشل ہے, وہ پرائیویٹ سیکٹر اس کو ٹیپ کر سکتی ہے. تیسری جو ہمارے پاس اویلیبل وہ ہے, وہ کہتے ہیں ہیومن ہے, مشین ہے. تو مشین بار کے اوپر ہمیں ڈیپینڈ کرنا پڑتا ہے. دوسرا منی ہے, یعنی جو فائنینشیل سپورٹ ہے وہ ہمارے پاس جتنا ہے اتنا ہی ہم کر سکتے ہیں, مطلب ایگزسٹنگ ریسورسز میں. تو اس کے لیے بھی ایک تو جیویز کا ہے. دوسری بات یہ ہے کہ پرائیویٹ سیکٹر کو موٹیویٹ کر رہے ہیں, اس کو بتا دے کہ آپ ادھر بزنس کر سکتے ہیں, اس انسٹالیشن کر سکتے ہیں, ٹیکنالوجی امپورٹ بھی کر سکتے ہیں, along with کہ وہ اس کے اوپر کوئی ریسرچ کا بھی اپرچونٹی دے. جس طرح ایس ڈی پی آئی ان کو بلائے کہ ہم اس کو لوکلائزیشن کس طرح کر سکتے ہیں. تو یہ چیز ہے. لیکن ہمیں ایگزسٹنگ ریسورسز کے اوپر جو اسٹڈی ہم کر رہے ہیں, اس کے لو نو ہائی انویسٹمنٹ کے اوپر ہم چلے جائیں, اور شارٹ ٹرم, لانگ ٹرم, میڈیم ٹرم کی طرف ہم چلے جائیں کہ کس طرح اس چیز کو ہم وہ جو لو ہینگنگ فروٹس ہے, یا جو لو انویسٹمنٹ ہے یا نو انویسٹمنٹ ہے, اس کی طرف چلے جائیں. تو بیسیکلی جو میرا پوائنٹ ہے, جو فائنینشیل ہے وہ جیویز کے تھرو پرائیویٹ سیکٹر کو موٹیویٹ کر لیں, اور جو ایگزسٹنگ ریسورسز ہے اس پر ہم فوکس کریں, تب ہم آگے جا سکتے ہیں. اگر ہم پالیسیز کے اوپر اس کے لیے بیٹھے رہے, تو پالیسیز ایک آرگنائزیشن ہم جا رہے تھے, ہم پچھلے مہینے ایک وہ تھی عبید صاحب بھی ادھر تھے, تو آلموسٹ وہ کہ 20 سال کے بعد پالیسی اپروو ہوئی ہے نا, یا وہ ریویو ہوئی ہے. تو مطلب یہ چونکہ یہ ہمارا اپنا مطلب ہے, ہم اپنے گیپ بتانے بھی چاہیے, پرائیویٹ سیکٹر کو بھی چاہیے, پبلک سیکٹر کو بھی بتانے چاہیے. تو اس کے لیے جو امپلیمنٹیشن فریم ورک ہے وہ کر رہے ہیں, اور ہم اس کے اوپر جو پریکٹیکل ایگزیکیوشن ہے اس کے اوپر کام کریں.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Aftab, sir. Wonderful points, and we'll definitely take those into account. So just last 1 minute comment from the Nika, and then I'll be handing it over back to you, Mara. Yes, if you could, yeah, come.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Munib Ahmed, Assistant Director from NICA. So first of all, I would like to congratulate all the authors from Pride, NUST and STPI for such an informative studies. So جہاں تک بات ہے سیمنٹ سیکٹر کی, تو یہ بالکل ایک بہت امپورٹنٹ سیکٹر ہے, اور جیسے بات ہوئی نو ڈاؤٹ ہمارے پالیسی فارمولیشن میں بہت زیادہ ایشوز ہیں. اس میں ڈاکٹر فہیم صاحب نے جو سجیشن دی کہ پالیسی فیڈ بیک بالکل ایک سائیکل ہونا چاہیے, کہ ایک پالیسی ہے وہ امپلیمنٹ ہوتی ہے, اس کو کوارٹرلی بیسس پہ یا 6 منتھلی بیسس پہ اس کا فیڈ بیک ضرور لینا چاہیے کہ یہ کیسا چل رہا ہے, اور ان شاء اللہ تعالیٰ ہم جہاں تک کوشش ہوئی ہم بھی اس کو سجیشن کو آگے جو ہے بھیجیں گے. अच्छा, यहाँ पे मैं बस एक छोटी सजेशन देना चाहूंगा, जहाँ पे बात हुई बड़े मैयर्स की, टेक्नोलॉजिकल चेंजेस की, वहां पे हमें कुछ सॉफ्ट मैयर्स भी, जैसे अवेयरनेस क्रिएशन होगी, फिर एनर्जी मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम का एक कंसेप्ट है, हमें सिस्टम क्रिएशन की तरफ आना चाहिए। जैसे दुनिया के अंदर ISO 50001 जो एनर्जी मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम है, वो आजकल इंडस्ट्री उस तरफ जा रही है। वहां पे आप अपनी, वो एक बिल्कुल मतलब कि आपके वहां पे कोई इन्वेस्टमेंट भी नहीं है, आप अपनी एनर्जी पॉलिसी फॉर्मुलेट करते हैं, एनर्जी टीम बनाते हैं, और एक जैसे क्वालिटी मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम को इम्प्लीमेंट करते हैं, इसी तरह आप एनर्जी मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम को भी इम्प्लीमेंट करते हैं। तो मेरा ख्याल है ये एक अच्छा मेजर हो सकता है, और एक लो हैंगिंग फ्रूट है, और एक सिस्टमेटिक अप्रोच है। तो इन चीजों को अगर हम इनकॉर्पोरेट करें तो इंशाल्लाह ताला उम्मीद है कि बेशक ये हार्ड टू बेट सेक्टर है, लेकिन हम एनडीसी के टारगेट को अच्छे तरीके से जो है अचीव कर सकते हैं। थैंक यू।
Thank you so much, everyone. And it's time to wrap up now. So I would like to invite Mr. Badr Alam, the CEO of Pride. He is a seasoned journalist. He has held senior editorial positions in the News and Herald, and he also has served as executive director at RDPI as well as SDPI. With this up, please, if you can wrap up and conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Amara, and thank you everyone for this wonderful discussion. I am not an expert of anything. I just have this dubious distinction of being the CEO of Policy Research Institute for Equitable Development, which is one of the authors and sponsors for the study that Dr. Fahim and his team has conducted. There are a few things that I would want to emphasize as a conclusion of this entire discussion today, and those are the things that have already been said and done in this discussion, and those pertain to how do we move forward from where we stand now. So if you look at the two studies that have been done, they have taken up this issue in a sort of holistic manner, whereas SDPI studies looks at the whole cement sector from a top-down approach with like the context of Pakistan's nationally determined commitments for Paris Agreement and also SDGs. So that is the top-down view that they have taken, and they have seen how this cement industry can move forward to achieve the targets set under SDGs and NDCs. And then Pride and Nust study takes this forward and looks at the micro level and goes into a cement plant and takes like a micro level view and tells us how this roadmap or pathway to net zero in cement industry can be achieved at the plant level. So when these two studies are read together, they give you a very clear picture of what is happening in the industry now, what can happen in the industry now, and what should be happening and it is not happening in the industry now. So with all these three factors having been discussed very thoroughly, I think we have reached at a stage where now we are discussing how to move this discussion forward, and like suggestions from the industry and also from the government have come forward that we need to create some kind of a forum, some kind of a group that takes this discussion in the future and tries to implement some of the suggestions and some of the recommendations that have made by the authors of the two studies. So as the CEO of Pride and as one of the sponsors of this discussion, I make a commitment to you that this entire discussion will be followed up very vigorously, very effectively, and soon we will be reaching out to most of you for the formation of some kind of a forum in which these discussions can be, held in a more robust, in a more critical, in a more in-depth manner, and then those discussions are taken to the policymakers, or policymakers are invited to those discussions as a means to have them implemented. But there are a few things that need to be also taken into account at this point. I think Basit made this point that CBAM or European mechanism for carbon taxation might be far in the future as far as cement industry is concerned. I totally agree with that. But rains that are hitting Pakistan, they are very, very imminent. And they are very, very problematic because they are happening in seasons that they would not did not used to happen. And as a result of that, lives and livelihoods are at stake, as our colleague from Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund has rightly pointed out. So what do we do about that? Do we still continue to say that our carbon footprint is very small, so we do not need to do anything and we should wait for America and China and India, the big polluters, to do something first? Or we should, take some kind of initiative to save our own society, save our own economy? And I think that is the urgency that climate change is creating, and that is the urgency that we all need to be working under. Maybe CBAM is an enforced mechanism that will force some parts of our industry to do that kind of a change. But this climate change is not like something that Europe or America is imposing on us. It has been imposed by us, by the activity of all of us together, not just Pakistanis, not just Chinese, not just Indians, not just Americans, but all the human beings. They have been using these fossil fuels for the last 200 years. And as a result of that, we see that everything has changed around us. We are in the last half of April and the temperatures are still like they used to be in February. And we are having like massive rains in areas in Balochistan and Sindh, which did not used to get any rains in these times of the year. So life is changing, weathers are changing, climate is changing. We need to do something. If we continue to insist that, okay, we will wait for policy to come in, if we continue to wait to, like some SDPI authors, reporters, researchers, and some pride reporters to do some research for us, and then we will act, I think that time is already past. We need to act urgently and we need to act very, very strongly. And I think these two studies gave us ample reason and ample food for thought to move forward. And I think and I hope that all the people sitting here understand and realize the urgency to act, to implement what have been said. And with these words, I thank you very much for your participation and for wonderful discussion that we have had today. I think food is available, skylight at the rooftop. Thank you very much again for your participation.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. And with that, we'd like to wrap up. So Skylight is on the first floor, ground floor? Ground floor, right. So you are all invited to lunch with us at Skylight. And again, the studies will be emailed to all of you and a follow-up email. So thank you everyone.